OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Right, it's bang on 7:30. It is Tuesday, the 24th of May. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. We're here with you all the way through until 10 this morning. If there's anything you'd like to get off your chest, the hashtag is OTB AM. And we're rerunning all of the audio that we had from the day that the Saipan news story broke. And we're basically putting our feet up and just running that show as a little piece of a time capsule from history. Because that's all anybody wants to talk about at the moment, isn't it?
Have you been stopped in the street being asked, you're the guy?
No. No.
That's that's the big ambition today. Actually, you know, we're gonna get to the bottom of it.
It's stopped in the street. Prove once and for all,
finally,
that Mick McCarthy was wrong.
20 years and one day later, 3 people in a studio finally came to the conclusion of who was right and who was wrong. So we've knocked our heads together and came up with all the answers.
Colm Boohig's also here this morning. Colm, good morning to you.
Morning, guys.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm looking forward to finding out who was right in 2 hours' time.
What age were you?
I was 13, first year in school.
Seminal moment in a man's life.
On crutches for the summer.
Oh, another summer on crutches. Accident prone.
The first of 2.
Right.
You just know about both now.
You wouldn't have got a letter signed by Roy Keane that summer.
Sorry?
You wouldn't have got a letter signed by Roy Keane that summer.
He would have been too busy. I just got him before his hectic period. Yeah.
He was busy writing books and making DVDs and ads. We'll get to those in a minute. But so you're Team Cork, Team Keane all the way.
No, I think there's a bit more nuance to it than that. I was talking to older relatives of mine, and I was asking them what was it like at the time conversing as adults in Cork. And
no one was adult about this, by the way.
He was saying people genuinely fell out over which side of the fence you were on.
Yeah.
Because I think in Cork it was a bit dangerous to go against the man himself. But a lot of people, like everybody around Ireland, thought, he should have played. And a lot of people thought he was completely right not to play. Well,
it's funny how far football has fallen in that people kind of don't see the World Cup as something that we should have an interest/involvement in. But there was a legitimate sense that we were going to have an interest and involvement in the World Cup. To put a little bit of context on it, Lenny Abramson made an ad for Carlsberg where we won the World Cup in Jason McAteer's dream. And it's fair to say it captured the zeitgeist in much the same way that Lenny Abramson captured the fucking zeitgeist at the start of lockdown. That's how all-encompassing that ad was. That's how excited we were about it.
Brilliant ad.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it was proper CGI before CGI. It was how did we just scored against Brazil? What is that goal? And we all got a little carried away because of that.
Why not? That's the whole point.
Well, we had the best player in the world.
Yeah.
Best player in the world.
Who was better in 2002 than Roy Keane?
Ronaldo.
Zidane.
Ronaldo was on one knee.
Ronaldo got World Player of the Year that year.
Still on one knee.
Yeah.
Yeah, Zidane probably going into the World Cup.
He scored the volley for Real Madrid against Bayer Leverkusen, the Champions League final weeks before that.
Roy Keane's in the conversation.
Got a conversation, yeah. Best player in his position, possibly.
Also, that France team in 2002, they collapsed.
Before the World Cup, yeah, where I'm saying,
I think
at Saipan, you're talking Zidane, the best player in the world. You're talking France's World Cup favourites.
I think there was still, we knew that it's Raymond Domenech is their head coach, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think we knew that the guy, I think by that stage he'd already proposed to his astrologer missus on TV.
I'm not familiar with the astrologer missus.
No, that was later on.
I don't think it was.
Oh, that was later on.
Are you sure?
Life.
Anyway, look, I would have had a fight with you in the pub about who are the best players in the world. And
it sounds like you still would have that fight.
I mean, I probably would. I can't remember any of the details though. That's the
I think around 1999, 2000. I would definitely say it would have been the best player in the world. I think 2002.
Anyway, either way,
in
that era, right? So we were losing the run of ourselves as we are at 7:34 this morning. Feel free to lose the run of yourself this morning with us. We're going to come back to this a little bit later on. Are we going to start with the successful predictions that everybody had for the Premier League?
Yeah. Well, on day one of the Premier League season just gone, Team OTB gathered and gave their predictions for the Premier League season ahead. So we went top 4 in descending order, the final bottom 3, the league's top scorer, the player of the season, and the first manager to be sacked or leave. Some interesting standout calls here. Tommy Rooney I don't know if you have this article in front of you open, guys, but Tommy Rindy, who did he call to win the
Manchester United.
Of course it is.
Amazing. United to win the league. And I can't find any sign of Tottenham Hotspur in this top 4 by anyone. Also noting absences of Eoin, Sheahan and Ger Gilroy in these predictions.
Yeah,
I did ours on air.
exactly, yeah. And no one
Remember yours
dug them
on air?
out.
Yeah. I said it yesterday. I predicted Chelsea to win the league. Probably Lukaku to win Golden Boot because that's why I was predicting Chelsea to win the league. So both of those blew up in spectacularly awful fashion.
I'd say you picked Timo Werner to be Golden Boot.
No, I changed to
I'd say you
Timo
did.
Werner after it became obvious that Lukaku was crap.
Lukaku was the most prominent call for top scorer
I just
by
thought he was
everyone.
gonna
Player
bang
of the
it, but-
season, Jack Grealish, Stephen Kisby Green. But myself and Phil Egan, correct bottom 3. Didn't look like it was going to
Is
be
there a
that
special
way.
prize for that?
Yeah, I do. I brought this up. I was very impressed with that. But nobody got the top 4 correct. And nobody called Son to get joint top goal scorer.
I presume most
A
people.
different time back then.
I'd say a lot of people. How many people left Liverpool out of the top 4, or had them in?
Liverpool are, I think, ubiquitous. I think they are everywhere.
But nobody was tipping them for the Premier League title at the start of the season, so everybody was right.
Yeah.
Did I not tip them in our? Did we not do Christmas crystal ball?
Oh yeah, but like that's
Did I
different.
not tip them for everything? I think I did.
You probably did, but like that's Christmas, and I know it was post Christmas where they went on.
Well, I mean, we actually record that in November just to open the kimono a bit.
yeah.
Player of the season, Bruno Fernandes. By God. First manager to go, Patrick Vieira. A few people called that.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
At the pre-season. I think he has massively outperformed expectations, and now I'm kind of in love with Patrick Vieira ever since he rooted your man up the hole.
Do you know what's absolutely mad is that only 2 people called for Xisco Muniz to go first this season, the Watford manager. Why
was
didn't,
he
we, why didn't we all go for him?
Was he first gone, or did Nuno go before him?
No, he was first.
Was he?
Yeah. It actually took a while for a manager to go this season, and then once he went, the domino started. I thought Sean Dyche would go first, but he did go.
He did go eventually.
Nathan Murphy got correct top goal scorer, which is frustrating. He also called Wolves to go down though. So
Bit of a disappointment.
yeah.
I can see the lack of all that lack of Spurs love that you talk about there.
There's
I think
no
that
Spurs.
was vindicated for half the season. I think to have suggested that Antonio Conte would have been Tottenham manager at the end of the year, and the Harry Kane situation wouldn't have unsettled them beyond the point of not qualifying for the Champions League. I think that's an all right shout. If you're trying to embarrass people this morning, Colm, you're not doing a very good job.
No, I'm not trying to embarrass. Why would I try to embarrass colleagues? No, I'm just bringing it up what we all talked about at the time. It just actually goes to show how great a job Antonio Conte's done, because halfway through the season you would have thought, yeah, it's absolutely spot on that nobody called for Spurs to be anywhere near this top 4. And he's come in and changed the whole place around. And to me, it still feels as he doesn't even want to really actually be there. And he's doing a great job in spite of what he actually feels about the place. So, yeah, no Spurs to be seen. Romelu Lukaku dominated top scorer. A lot changed as the season went on. It was a different time back in August 2021.
It was slightly different. Heading into next season, will the prediction be fairly similar? The teams who come up will be the teams who go down? Is there anybody who... I mean, is it going to be Manchester City to win the league? That's why I think Man United fans missing a bit of a trick here. What's happening is the establishment of a single hegemony. And if it wasn't for Liverpool over the last couple of years, everybody would be saying the Premier League has gone to the dogs because of the money. Now, maybe Newcastle will be able to, over the next couple of years, put it up to Manchester City.
Rejoice.
But that's what's happening here. So, if Ten Hag is not the man, Man United fans are staring down the barrel of Manchester City being the best team in world football year after year after year after
disagree.
year after year after year after year.
I disagree.
The only thing stopping them is Jurgen Klopp is the little boy, or is it a little girl with his finger in the dike?
Manchester United will come back and win a Premier League title at some point to put the finger
In the next
dike.
20 years. Yes, maybe.
Well, like, I mean, we always say that, you know, it's the amount that you're spending on player wages that dictates where you finish in the table. Manchester United, according to Spot Record, are number 1, top of the table, according to wages handed out. There will come a point over the next, I want to say, 5 years, where being number 1 in the wages table will be reflected in Manchester United's on-field performances. I know the last 10 years don't support that point, and there's a big body of evidence there over a full decade of action, but surely the odds are in their favour.
The papers were saying that they're trying to take 80 million a year off their wage bill next year. I don't know I don't know if that's 80 million in contract life. I don't know what the figure is. And the other thing about Spot Track is it's kind of made up.
It's not an exact science for sure. Like, this is for 2021, 2022, so this could have been done months ago, and like total salaries £208 million, and Manchester City in second at £142 million. So that's the magnitude of the difference there. So if it's kind of made up, you don't really have a leg to stand on, obviously, but maybe the rankings are correct.
The 2002 World Cup was special, says Sheahan. I remember watching Ireland-Germany in our school hall. Would you watch it in school, both of you?
Yeah, I think that's probably I
watched it at home.
It absolutely was a school. There was a mini Saipan that broke out in our school yard after the Germany game, because there was a guy in...
class
you were in primary school, that's why you were watching in school.
Yeah, why? Was secondary school not a thing?
School was out.
School was out for summer. Of course, yeah.
What class are you in?
I don't know, maybe second class or something like that. But I remember there was a guy in the room watching it with us who had a Keane jersey, a Robbie Keane jersey, and there was a guy in our class called Keane. And we went outside after Robbie Keane scored his goal against Germany, and there was this massive fight about who would be Keane. A guy who's actually called Keane, or the guy with the Robbie Keane jersey. I can't quite remember who won, but I remember it being worse than Saipan. It was properly tense. So that's what that inspired. But for primary school people, it was very much
Keane on Keane hate.
Keane on Keane hate. It was television on wheels. One room, we didn't have a school hall, into the biggest classroom, and remember it like yesterday. It's one of those things that you can pluck out from that era.
Did the class go mad when Robbie Keane scored?
Oh yeah, it was incredible.
Pylon style.
I don't think it was a pylon. I think we were very kind of refined, well-behaved children, but we enjoyed it in our own polite way.
And did you know enough about football in second class to be able to like sit and watch a full 90 minutes?
Well, we were definitely there. We were definitely there for the Robbie Keane goal. So
right, but you're mostly picking your nose and drawing pictures, right?
Yeah, or passing notes or whatever other kids. We probably hadn't even got to that stage.
Definitely not.
No. Or maybe I've just been told this and I didn't even watch it. You know, maybe we were actually napping. Maybe that was nap time.
In 2002 we had a great team, says James. Given, Finnan and Duff were in the Premier League team of the season. If you add both Keanes, Hart, Stalton, etc., then that's a spine to take on any side at the World Cup. Indeed, but Steve Finnan wasn't first choice because, you know, Gary Kelly was such a good presence. I think he might have been the first one to get a round of applause in for Mick, and that got his place in the team. It's like, I'm not say Gary Kelly wasn't a good footballer, but by that stage, Steve Finnan was better than him.
Dara there in the comment makes a really good point. Just on the fact that we're coming back to this, he says the fact that we haven't been to a World Cup in 20 years just adds to the Saipan fiasco.
Yeah.
I wonder does that like enhance the sense of pain? It definitely does. Like there was definitely just huge FOMO. I can remember from the 06 campaign in particular. Obviously 2010 comes with its own sense of heartbreak, but it just kind of felt that after 02 it was like, this is every summer for us now.
Yeah.
This is great. And then it's just every year, your childhood and the potential for a great summer of watching Ireland at a tournament just gets taken away.
Say we'd reached the quarterfinals in 02, right? Which is not beyond the bounds possibility at all. Say that had happened if Keane. Does it have a big impact? Or if we reach a semi-final, does it have a lasting legacy in terms of some kids who go on to be great athletes choose soccer instead of choosing Gaelic football or rugby? Is there something that happens, or is it nothing? Is it just
happen after Italia 90, after the quarter-final?
It might. I don't know. I mean,
I don't know if that.
Like you would say, yes, it did. You would say that yes, there was the team that Brian Kerr brings to the Euros underage, and brings to the World Championships underage is kind of maybe a bit of that legacy. I don't know. And was there no possibility that FAI? Anyway, as bad an organisation as it was, would have been able to benefit from it. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was just going to say, is that it probably would have been in the hands of the people who actually run football in the country to capitalise on it.
And maybe they couldn't have screwed it up. It was so big. Like, say we reach a semi-finals and it's the greatest thing that's ever happened.
Well, we were a penalty shootout away from that possibility, and then South Korea in the quarter-final
would have screwed us over.
We were not
beatable or being screwed over.
We were not getting past South Korea. You weren't. They were guaranteed a semi-final place.
Yeah.
7:45. Calling all cycling enthusiasts. Skoda are the main official main partner of the Tour de France, and to celebrate on OTB Sports, we have a once-in-a-lifetime giveaway. This amazing prize is a VIP trip to stage 13 of the Tour de France. from the 14th to the 16th of July, including flights and accommodation for one winner plus a partner. All you need to do for a chance to win is to make sure you're available to travel from the 14th to the 16th of July. It's not transferable, it's not changeable. You've got to be able to go because you're going to go and see the 13th stage of the tour. Just let us know who this Carrick-on-Shore cyclist is, who famously won the final stage of the Tour de France in 2020. So it's not the original Carrick-on-Shore cyclist, it's the latter day, late stage Carrick. Who's this?
And then, I just couldn't believe it happened. And then, the picture where I'm looking at the big screen, it was like, did this just happen?
Let us know by tweeting @Off the Ball with your answer. Each daily winner wins a €100 one for all voucher and a Skoda cycling jersey, and we'll go into the draw for the grand prize. Best of luck. Skoda drivers, for another chance to win, check out skodaservice.ie. A reminder, of course, OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Right, Roy Keane wasn't just a world-class footballer, he was also a world-class hype man.
Oh, without question. The hype around the 2002 World Cup, which most people will remember, was extraordinary. Just in terms of some of the figures, just reading an Irish Times business article yesterday, they said 7up has signed Roy Keane up in a €750,000 9-month promotional deal, and Carlsberg is continuing its relationship with Jason McAteer with a new €1.25 million campaign. So just back to Roy Keane, he says he's not exactly a stranger to Ireland-specific product endorsements. He appears in full Eastern Warrior regalia in Aircom's brand advertising. We may as well have a look at the Eastern Warrior regalia, which everybody will remember.
Aircom and Irish soccer. Go further.
Like for me, it was Carlsberg and the Samurai ad, which were the two for me at the time that really stick out.
I don't remember the Samurai ad being as ubiquitous. Like obviously, it got killed as soon as Saipan happened, so it would have been on in every ad break during the whole World Cup. Instead, there was, like, I remember the MasterCard ads, the two
balls.
Yeah, exactly. Always talking about who's going to win, and it's always the Germans. And you're like, that Germany team was completely shit. Like, they were awful. Oliver Kahn, and that was it, basically. But Keane's an actor. You can see in that. He really wants to be an actor. He likes that stuff. He's dressed as, and he's got the sword, and he's like, he's not in any way not giving of himself in that thing.
Yeah.
He like totally embraces the absolute madness of that. That's not like, I just missed a penalty. Oh, I like these pizzas. That's none of that stuff with him.
It's not Padraig Harrington swing shirt stuff.
No.
It's genuine Hollywood stuff. So to continue from this article, he appears in full Eastern Warrior regalia in Aircom's brand advertising. Also as a crisp stealing leprechaun for walkers. Again, something that people will remember. Have a look.
Better tasting crisps are now available in Ireland. We think you'll be as keen on them as Gary is.
I don't really remember that one as much. Like, obviously it's been shared on YouTube so much over the years. But
I remember it. I'm just imagining the directors and all these ads going through with Keane beforehand exactly this is what I want you to do, right? This is it. And I'm just imagining his levels of enthusiasm.
But I think
and how reticent he is.
I think he's not reticent at all. That's my point about this. He loves all that stuff.
Do you think
that?
He does?
Absolutely, 100%. Look, you can't get that. You can't fake that. Like, you can't. He's not coming in and being an asshole all day and then doing his 10 seconds and then taking the cash and leaving. He's enthusiastic, interested, curious about that stuff. Like, because it's completely out there. Like the next one. What's the next one?
Well, the next one we don't actually have the Kit Kat one, but there is one where he is doing a needlepoint as a part of Kit Kat Take a Break, and it's Roy Keane out of character. But then the other thing, which kind of was the whole point of this Irish Times article, was his endorsement and his connection with 7-Up. So this is a pretty basic one. This is the 7-Up television ad that ran that summer actually.
Get selected by 7-Up this summer and you could play football with Roy Keane. If you're 7-Up for it, simply spot the ball. How you play it is up to you. Get selected with 7-Up.
This is like a huge campaign that was just off screen as well. There was billboards up around Roy Keane and the 7-Up campaign. It's very, very hard to get good images of this, but from a Guardian article there is an image of the 7-Up campaign being defaced after Saipan. You can see Roy Keane's face cut out
with the two little builders in it.
Builders up there. They had to take down some of those billboards because of the fact that it was just a health and safety risk that people were climbing up on them and chopping out Roy Keane's face from these, which obviously is just one of the countless stories of mania around the time. Like just a couple of other bits from that. They said I can't quite remember what it was, the exact bit, but basically we're making the point 7-Up. They will stick by Roy Keane, that they had printed so many cans. They had they had printed out so many billboards. They can't really
wholeheartedly endorse his
right
decision to do whatever happened.
Yeah, but like just a commercial.
Give me some of that sweet lemon and lime.
Yeah, a commercial beast around that time, to say the least.
And I'd say I don't know, did everybody pay the full whack, or is it like, was some of it contingent on him playing the football match? I don't know.
Yeah,
it's maybe it sounds like Michael Kennedy was a bit of a genius as a lawyer, so maybe he just got all the money anyway. Look, I don't know. I don't think he was. I think he wouldn't have been reticent at all. And you can see in the Sky Bet ad that he's doing at the moment that like he fully embraces all that stuff.
Do you think he's a collaborative partner in all of the process?
100%.
Do you think he inputs his own? I think I should do this there in the Samurai ad. I think I should wink at Gary Lineker.
Well, I'd say the wink is obviously in the script.
Yeah, but do you think, say he said, I'll just give him a cheeky smile, and then Roy comes back, why didn't I give him a wink?
I don't think he was just
could
like...
you see him suggesting ideas for himself?
Yeah. Do you think he's like brooding and dark and annoyed and angry the whole way through?
Not in real life, as we've have come to learn more and more, but I would have thought with strangers, I think that's the whole interest with Keane, that he would have been quite reluctant to come out of his shell.
I think he might have respected the people he was working with, and so therefore given them due deference.
And he's not being forced to do this. Like if Walker's asked him to come in and wear a leprechaun costume,
they are paying him a lot of money.
Oh yeah,
and he kind of rejects the kind of
but like
silliness
we've
of
already
it. He
said,
could just say no.
A lot of footballers just go through the motions in these ads, but he wants to do it properly, like everything he was doing.
No, I think he enjoyed it. I think he enjoys the acting. That's the thing, and I think he enjoys playing the character on Sky, and I think he definitely enjoyed playing the character at Man United. Like it's an inflammation of who he is, of his personality.
He had a character at that time, the shaved head version of himself, which he said in I think his second book was a character. He was playing a version of himself when he was shaving his head for 3 years straight. Between 1999 and 2002, he just constantly had the shaved head. And also interestingly is that we have 4 ads from that summer alone, or in thereabouts 2002. And I think after Saipan, I don't remember him being in many more ads as a player. I think that was kind of it for him in terms of his commercial activity. Because he only had 3-4 more years left in his career.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well,
he was making bank while it was there.
Was the Pepsi stuff before that? There was like a United one. I know he wasn't in the
I know that one you're
in
talking
the Edgar
about.
Davids era. He wasn't in that, I don't think. But
no, you're right. That was before though. Yeah, I think that was before around the Champions League win. Yeah.
All right. It's 7:54. Colm, you've been keeping an eye on the start of the tennis. What are you watching out for over the next couple of weeks?
It's pretty interesting. Rafa Nadal won yesterday quite comfortably, and in doing so won his 106th French Open match, which means he has won the most of any ATP player to play any Grand Slam, surpassing Roger Federer's 105 Wimbledon wins. So he, Novak Djokovic and Carlos Alcaraz, who we've talked about beforehand, they all went through swimmingly. On the women's side, there's some really interesting early on results in the first round. Barbora Krejcikova, the defending champion, she was eliminated yesterday. Now, to give context there for Krejcikova, who's on screen now, she hasn't played for 3.5 months. She really wasn't likely to play this tournament at all and decided at the last minute to do so to defend her title. And she hasn't actually played on clay since winning the French Open final last summer against Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova. She, having said that, still left the post-match press conference in tears yesterday because of what happened, but she wasn't likely to play, so she came to play anyway. She's the first defending champion to lose in the first round of the French Open since Elena Ostapenko in 2018. You also have yesterday Naomi Osaka losing to Amanda Anisimova. That's the second time this year that Osaka has lost to Anisimova in Grand Slam. They played at the Australian Open and Osaka had 2 match points in the final set but lost the match. Osaka doesn't have a good record on the French Open. She's never got to the second week in clay. Same with Wimbledon, and in her post-match press conference she talked about that at Wimbledon, that she may not actually play this year's All England Club because she has referred to it as an exhibition event. Wimbledon are banning all Russian and Belarusian players from competing. The ATB and WTA have responded by removing all ranking points from Wimbledon. So technically it is an exhibition event because you can't win any ranking points. So Osaka has said, because she's not really great on grass, she might play just to get a bit of grass practice, but she might not play either. Whereas Iga Swiatek, world number 1, who breezed through her first round yesterday, she was asked about the same thing, and she quite amusingly said, well, I've already amassed loads of ranking points, so it doesn't matter to me, I'm going to play anyway. And Swiatek will probably actually win Wimbledon as well as winning this French Open. So Osaka's out, no major surprise there, but still, such a great player, won 4 Grand Slams already in her career, to be out so early on is a bit of a shock to the system. Emma Raducanu, she got through in 3 sets yesterday, her first ever French Open match. She's of course the reigning US Open champion. She's struggled badly with injuries since that win in Flushing Meadows last year, but she got through her match against qualifier yesterday just about. Garbina Muguruza, the 2016 champion, she's out in the first round, as is Ons Jabeur, who has had a fantastic season so far in clay. That was a real shock. She's probably the second best player in 2022 on current form. Her clay season to date has been really kind of spectacular. She won in Madrid and she got to the final in Charleston and Rome, but she came unstuck after winning the first set of her first round match. She ended up losing in 3 sets, so there's been loads of surprises on the women's front at the moment. The only major shock I'd say on the men's front so far is Dominic Thiem, finalist in 2018 and 19. He's out, but Thiem, a bit like Krejcikova, has really barely played in the last year, and actually he was talking afterwards about possibly going to the Challenger Tour just to get some confidence with a few wins, because his confidence is completely shot now, having consistently losing matches and never really being fit pretty much since he won the US Open in 2020.
Okay, who's going to win it?
Djokovic and Swiatek.
Really?
Yeah.
I think Alcaraz going to beat him.
I think Nadal pulled up in the Italian Open. He has this terrible ankle problem. He'd never problem yesterday in the first round against Jordan Thompson of Australia, but when he plays against a real player of substance in a Grand Slam, that is, I think he'll come unstuck and he could play Djokovic as early as the quarter-final.
Okay. All right. Colm, good stuff. Thanks very much for that. It's 7:58 this morning. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're going, I'll tell you what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. Should I do that? Will we do it coming up? Have I already done it? I haven't done it. There you go. Daniel Harris is going to join us right now and talk about the Eric Ten Hag press conference yesterday. Sarah Donovan's going to join us at 8:15 to tell us what she thinks of the Cork Hurlers now. Sports Pages at 8:35. John Duggan coming up at 8:50 talking about Saipan 20 years on. We'll also be joined by Dion Fanning and David Connolly. James Ryan is going to talk to us at 9:20, and then some Philippe Auclair goodness from last night, talking about the end of the Premier League season and the Kylian Mbappe contract. But for now, Daniel Harris, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Hi, everyone.
A cream suit. Do we read anything into is anybody wearing a cream suit? I mean, white suits, cup finals, all that kind of stuff. I was like, ooh, this is a brave choice.
It's an extremely ballsy move, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I always, when I see a cream suit, I think back to when I was doing A-level politics, and our teacher was wearing cream, I guess they were chinos, comes in cream chinos, and he'd obviously visited the men's room prior to coming, and he had been uncareful. And when you do that, and you come into a room featuring various 17-year-old kids, some of them boys, you've got to expect that it's going to get pointed out, and it did. And that is what I saw Ten Hag, and I thought, oh, mate, you are an extremely brave individual. Perhaps that is a kind of quality that United needs, someone who says no to convention.
And what did he say in the actual press conference that gives you any comfort? Or, like, does any of this stuff matter? Like, sometimes it does. It only matters if you screw it up, really. Isn't that the point?
I mean, you'd have to try quite hard to screw it up. I mean, because what you've he wasn't asked any particularly searching questions. I find that in press conferences quite a lot of the time, and I know that I don't mean all people who are in press conferences when I say this, but you can tell quite a lot of the time I haven't sat in that many, but I've sat in enough to know that people ask questions because they want a particular answer. Then a lot of the time they're not asking questions because they want to find out a particular or even an interesting piece of information. Their editor wants a particular headline about a particular subject, and they ask as many questions as they possibly can, trying around that one subject to get a particular answer. But Ten Hag also went in there with absolutely no intention of giving anything away. So I felt the same things that I thought about Ten Hag prior to that I feel afterwards now, that it felt like he's tough, and he's definitely tough enough to be United manager. I'm not certain whether he's compelling enough, but perhaps he doesn't have to be compelling. Perhaps the compelling aspect comes through players seeing that he knows what he's talking about, the football gets better, and he becomes compelling in that way. But he doesn't have Klopp's easy charm, but you don't have to have that necessarily. Tuchel doesn't have it either. Tuchel's a good talker when he gets going, and Guardiola is something else again. But Guardiola is a very specific thing because he started with that first job where he had some of the greatest players of all time. He made them better. So he comes to every job with players knowing that, well, look, he improved the greatest players ever, some of them. And the players know he's going to make them better and he's going to win. So Guardiola's charisma is not really, doesn't seem to me to be rooted in his actual personality. It's rooted in his achievements. And I guess Ten Hag, whilst probably being less of a weirdo and less of a hypocrite about human rights issues, is more like that than like Klopp. But anyone who speaks about Ten Hag says the players love him. I think that he'll also know that he has a monstrous job to do, so that should enable him to pick quite a few of his own players rather than deal with the detritus that he's been left.
Will the players respect that, I guess, caution from Ten Hag in the press more, given what's happened over the last few months? Like, for example, did they take Rangnick's honesty badly in his public pronouncements?
Are we back to talking about the trousers? I don't know. We don't know. Like, these players are experts in seeing off managers, and hopefully there's going to be very few of them left. I'm not personally bothered remotely by their delicate sensitivities and sensibilities. I doubt Ten Hag is, because they've absolutely disgraced themselves this season. Even against Palace, with their new manager watching, they couldn't pull their fingers out and put in a serious amount of effort. So I think quite a lot of them are going to be gone, and I definitely don't think that Ten Hag should or will be pandering to the fact that they might be feeling or might be a bit delicate, because that's not going to work. Ole was quite delicate with them. It didn't work, and they shafted him. And I don't think that Ten Hag will be delicate with them. I think that he'll be tough. He knows that they're not fit enough, and he knows that they're not good enough, and they're going to have to either address that immediately in pre-season, or they're going to have to find somewhere else to play. And that already applies to quite a few of them now. I mean, so many of them are leaving anyway, and I think we've already been told that Aaron Wan-Bissaka's been informed he can go, and I doubt very much he'll be the last.
I mean, it's great telling Aaron Wan-Bissaka and maybe Phil Jones and a few others that they can go, but no one's going to pay them the same wage as they're on. So maybe Manchester United have decided they're willing to contribute 25, 35, 40, 50% of their salary to a new club, unless Newcastle decide that they're going to be silly and spend too much money. If that does happen, I would be impressed, because I think the right thing to do is to raise everything to the ground and to start rebuilding with players who you know are your players. Whether or not they're good enough straight away, the trouble with that is that it takes a bit longer.
I'm sure Ten Hag has been told that, because just of the way he spoke yesterday, that he'll have seen what has happened to other managers at United, where they've been promised stuff and it hasn't materialised. He saw what happened with Mourinho at the end, where basically Woodward went in public and said, well, actually, we didn't agree with Mourinho's transfer targets. I mean, turned out Woodward was right. I mean, but it doesn't matter. The second the board start doing something like that, the manager's toast. And I'm sure that Ten Hag has said to them that the players that need to go, because ultimately a player who's sat on the bench doing nothing for you, taking wages off you, is an expense. So if you get rid of that player for some money and paying some wages, you're still quids in relative to where you would have been if you just had that player sitting around making the place look miserable. So the question now, I think, is probably not so much about whether the board are prepared to take a loss on players that the manager doesn't want. It's, do they have the acumen to get the deals done, both ins and outs, and quite a lot of them spinning plates at the same time. And there is no evidence to suggest that they do. However, most of the people that have been cluttering up the place with their nonsense for the last 10 or so years have gone or are going. So there is hope that there is a little bit more expertise and footballing expertise than there was previously.
Rannick was saying on Sunday that out of the starting 11, other than Edinson Cavani, the other 10 will be at the club next season. Does that give you hope, or does that just make you feel, oh God, what are we in for again next season?
Yeah, I mean, most of the players that started, I guess I would have expected to stay. As in, I mean, so if you look at the team that played, De Gea will be the goalkeeper next season. Henderson will be gone either permanently or on loan. I imagine they'd probably want to sell him permanently because he's going to be an all right goalkeeper. He's going to be a Premier League goalkeeper, I imagine. He's probably not going to be good enough for United because he's not particularly good at anything. He's not great shot stopper. He's not great with his feet. He's better. He's not bad at organising the defence. But if you're defenders taking orders off a goalkeeper they don't particularly trust to stop stuff, is also probably not that helpful. So I imagine Dean Henderson will go. De Gea will stay. Dalot played. He's not good enough. But I guess Ten Hag doesn't think he's signing 2 right backs, so he's picked one. And Brandon Williams will probably go as well. So that makes some sense, even though I'm not a fan of Dalot. Maybe they'll buy a right back. Selling Harry Maguire at this point would be a problem, and Victor Lindelof also. So I guess the centre-backs will be Maguire, Lindelof, Varane, and they're going to sign one who will play with Varane. That will be the first choice. So again, I'd happy to see the end of Maguire and Lindelof, but it's not realistic to think that they're selling Maguire, Lindelof, Jones and Bailly, and then and Tuanzebe, and then they have to buy some centre-backs. It just seems unlikely. Telles was there. I mean, he isn't any good, but Luke Shaw's not reliably fit enough, and I guess the left back will be a position they address next summer. Who else played in that game?
McFred
Bruno,
midfield.
McFred and Bruno. Again, Bruno will, I'm sure, Bruno has had a dreadful season and obviously created the goal for Palace, but with a proper manager and proper better players around him and proper idea of what they're doing, I'm sure he'll be much better. McFred, again, they're reliable. They're good first reserves, even though T in particular has had an astonishingly awful season, and inexplicably so in some ways. But what's odd about McTominay is that he is a number 8, not a number 6, but the extent to which he's unable to play number 6 is baffling, in that he regularly takes up positions where the keeper and the defenders can't find him to get the ball out, and he stands in the cover shadow. And I don't understand, because he doesn't seem particularly thick or dense, and I don't understand why he's unable to do that. And the only other sensible answer is that he's hiding. But I'm certain that he wouldn't do that either. So I'm hoping that with some decent instructions, McTominay will be better. But yeah, him and Fred are good reserves. I wouldn't expect either of them to be in the first choice 11 next season, but as rotation players, where you've got other good players around them, they're both okay. Anthony Elanga, he has some ability, but even the chance that he missed on Saturday and on Sunday, and I would never want to boil down someone and say, well, look, that goes to show, because look, all players miss chances, all players miss easy chances. It wasn't that easy a chance, but to me, it really encapsulated the problem that I have with him, in that everything feels rushed and snatched at, and I don't see the technical ability and composure of a United centre-forward. But who knows? I mean, again, maybe with a bit of coaching, he'll be better, but he's not at the level that even Danny Welbeck was at that age, who had a much better, much more adhesive touch, and I think better awareness too. So we'll see, but yeah, I wouldn't have expected United to sell him either. Cavani's going, and that's more or less the team, isn't it? So yeah, I'm not surprised by any of those things. I'm not getting agitated by any of those things, because much as we'd basically all like to keep Varane, Sancho, maybe Rashford and Bruno and sell everyone else, it's not feasible. So yeah, more or less, the ones that have to go will go, and the ones that have to go just that little bit less will stay.
Are you happy that Ronaldo seems to be staying at the moment?
I think it depends how he's going to be used. United got to have a new centre forward, and they need to find, but as much as that, they need to find a new way of playing. And the problem there is that they're not, the centre forward that they're going to buy, who's going to be a part of however Ten Hag decides he wants to play, is not going to play in the way that Ronaldo does. So that is slightly problematic, but on the other hand, if Ronaldo plays half the number of games, he'll have the energy to do quite a lot more running, and that is something that Ten Hag will have to put his foot down about, because Ronaldo was good at the beginning of the season and good at the end of the season, but totally lost his way in the middle when there are a lot of games coming. And Ten Hag is going to need to be strong in telling Ronaldo that he's not. One second, I feel that there's someone peeping around the wall. But Ronaldo is going to have to tell Ten Hag that he's not going to play in half the games, and also he's going to need to be very defined about the role he wants from him. If he's going to play, say, in the way that he's been using Sebastian Haller as a hold-up player, he's going to score fewer goals, and he's going to need to alter his game slightly. If he's going to be a one-touch finishing kind of player, which was the player I thought that Ole would want him to be, then they're probably going to need another winger as well, because I think that Jadon Sancho is capable of providing the kind of service that allows those one-touch near-post penalty spot finishes, the cutbacks, the way that we see City play quite a lot of the time. But there's no one really on the right-hand side that's going to provide that. So I don't have a problem with Ronaldo staying, because ultimately in the back of my mind, there's also, if Ronaldo hadn't been there this season, how unremittingly awful it would have been. I mean, not unremittingly awful, how even more unremittingly awful it would have been. But there's going to need to be some rules laid down about how often Ronaldo is going to play and what is going to be expected of him.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what does transpire early next season. I guess the question would be regarding the level of patience that I guess Manchester United fans will afford Ten Hag. Did you sense that amongst the Manchester United fan base that patience wore thin with Rangnick, more so because of the fact that he was only there for a temporary amount of time, and everybody knew that come the end of the season he wasn't going to be in the managerial role, whereas it'll kind of reset come August, that if it isn't a great first half of the season, it'll be like, okay, this is a long-term project.
I think patience ran thin with Rangnick because it was so crap.
Yeah.
And where it comes to a point where you're just getting absolutely nothing out of the players. It's not possible for these players to produce a worse half season under Rangnick than they have. And so patience is running thin on that basis. I think it's with Ten Hag, he will have some patience in the beginning because he's inherited a mess. But the thing is that it should get better quite quickly, quite significantly, because it's so bad already. And he's going to have, hopefully, minimum 4, maybe 6, 7 different players. So he's going to have a very different team. And I think with all the managers post-Fergie, the thing that unites the way that the majority of match-going fans have responded to them is that it's fine until it becomes obvious that it's not getting better. So there'll always be people that didn't like the managers to begin with. I didn't like Moyes to begin with. I could not believe that United went for Moyes. I thought that it was ludicrous that Fergie did it, but it was even more ludicrous that Fergie was allowed to do it, because the idea that David Moyes had done anything to prove himself to be even a candidate, not the best candidate, was insane. And so I was one of those people who, I guess, I was supporting the team in the ground, but I was waiting for Moyes to fail. So I never really had any patience with Moyes. But people lost their patience with Moyes with I think probably the time where they got a slapping from City very early on, but the time people really lost their patience with Moyes when they were kind of losing at home to Newcastle and to Southampton and those million crosses against Fulham. Then Van Gaal, I mean, I was sort of quite happy with Van Gaal because I thought that he was going to be practical. He'd come off a World Cup where he'd done an amazing job with Holland, where they basically got to the semi-finals because of him and his tactical interventions. And he played really negatively with Holland. And I thought that was because he was being practical. That was the way that Holland had to play to succeed. So he turned up at United, and I thought that he was going to play some good football, because that was really what he'd done a lot of the way through his career. He signed some good attackers. And they played this one match against Leicester really early on. United were 3-1 up and lost 5-3. And I think they played a diamond in that game with Di Maria was in it. And then they had maybe Rooney behind Van Persie and Falcao, just loads of attackers. And in getting to 3-1, they played some absolutely brilliant football. Then a player, I think Raphael, did he get sent off? I think wrongly sent off. And they gave a penalty away as well. And they ended up losing 5-3. And after that, it was just negativity all the way. And that was the problem with Van Gaal, was the negativity. People start to lose their patience. And then there was a period over Christmas, he ended up getting fired at the end of the season. And at that point, it was obvious it was never getting better. It was never going to be good. And so at that point, when you're waiting for a manager to be sacked, he gets miserable. Same with Mourinho. He picks McTominay instead of Pogba in Sevilla. Lots of people had already lost their patience before then. United then get absolutely dominated at home by Sevilla in the return. And you know at that point that it's not going to get good. It's got so bad. It's got so bad because of the way that the manager manages that it's not possible to get good again. Same with Ole. A lot of people lost patience with Ole, thought Ole was rubbish from the beginning. Fair enough, I see the argument. For me, I saw constant improvements until the beginning of the season that's just finished. And for me, the point at which it was like, okay, it's obvious this is not possible. It's not possible for this to get better anymore, was when they got battered at Leicester, when just the same errors that kept getting made got made again, that are a consequence of the particular style of Ole's management. And at that point, and I would say with Ten Hag, because he's got such a lot of work to do, the point at which hope is lost seems like it's quite a way in the distance. Yeah. But also the point from where it is now gives him so much scope to improve.
That's it.
That I think that because of the scope to improve, we're going to see it get better, because it can only get better. He's going to sign some good players this summer. I'm not worried that he's going to do what Moyes did or what was done to Moyes, I guess both of those things, and go and sign Marouane Fellaini on deadline day and that be it. Yeah. He's going to sign some players. Yes, and he's going to sign players that he knows how to get the best from, because he has a way that he wants to play. He's not dealing with the mess of everyone else in as much as all the other managers were, because he's clearing the decks. Yeah, exactly that.
Okay, last question for me on this. I was wondering why the Man United fans were happier that Manchester City were winning the league than Liverpool, because ultimately I think that what's happening at Liverpool is largely down to Jurgen Klopp. And when the Klopp cycle finishes, as it will, as all great managers' cycles finish, then Liverpool will come back to the pack. Manchester City are based on an endless supply of money, where literally the money grows and grows and grows and grows day on day. And so therefore they are now going to be established as the power brokers of English football forever. So anything that slows them down, anything that halts their progress, anything that makes Pep less interested in staying, that like somehow maybe they could get a bad manager in there. Maybe. But even then, it'll be 6 months and they'll just get the next best manager in the world who they pay all the money to. So if I was a Man United fan, I would personally have preferred Liverpool to win than Manchester City to win, notwithstanding the traditional rivalry and the power and the titles. Am I wrong about that?
Well, I can only say what I think, and I can explain the various issues, and we can try. So first of all, I think that in general, people that haven't grown up in the playgrounds of Manchester and working in Manchester and living in Manchester are going to have less antipathy for City than people that did. So because they're not hanging around City fans all the time. So I think partly if you see people, so for me, I didn't grow up in Manchester. I mean, I grew up to dislike Man City because my dad raised me to dislike Manchester City and to dislike Leeds. But what I saw was Liverpool winning everything in sight. So for me, it was always Liverpool. City for most of my life, and I'm 43 now, have never been a threat. They've been the team that you want to beat because they're a local rival and you have all the reasons that you have to dislike them. But competitively, there's never been that much rivalry in my lifetime. I mean, there was in my dad's lifetime. My dad hates City because when my dad went to school, there was a lot of City. It wasn't half and half. It was still more United, but there was a lot of City fans. There were who was mates with City fans, and also in those days, a lot of the Jews in Manchester supported City. So my dad was friends with a lot of City fans for that reason too. City was it's obviously much more complicated and much more nuanced than this, but United were the Catholic club and City were a Jewish club. But my dad's family were United, so my dad was United, but he had that growing up in the playgrounds of Manchester, you're going to have antipathy for City, but if you didn't, then it's going to be less so. So that would be one thing. Another thing would be that for United fans, for anyone really, well, City, it's much easier to dismiss City's success as plastic and based on human rights abuses. Whereas Liverpool's is, I mean, obviously you've still got American venture capitalists involved, but it is also much more based on charisma, the charisma of Jurgen Klopp, the magnetism of Jurgen Klopp, and the job that the backroom staff have done. In the history of football, there has probably never been a better run of transfers, of successful transfers, than what we've seen from Liverpool over the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, it's amazing, really. I don't say that with any pleasure, obviously, but we have to be honest, and it remains true. Okay. And so that would be another thing. Then you've also just got numbers. You've got the fact that, so for me, I wanted City to, I mean, wanted is obviously a very strong word, but I wanted City to win the league and I wanted Liverpool to win the European Cup because I'd much rather Liverpool got to 7 than City got to 1. I know what Liverpool winning the European Cup is like. It happened, the first time it happened in my life, I remember, I stayed up to watch the game, I was 5. I know what Liverpool winning the European Cup is like. It's something that happens. City winning the European Cup was something I spent the first 35, nearly 40 years of my life thinking I would never even have to think about. Yeah. Okay. And so I don't want that to happen. Similarly, United have won more leagues than Liverpool. I want that to stay the case. So, yeah, I guess those are the various
It's a complex cocktail of little hatreds that build up. Yeah, exactly.
And pettiness and all the things that make football beautiful.
Exactly. All right, Daniel, good stuff. Thanks a million for explaining that. Cheers.
See you. Good day. Have a good day, everyone.
Said Daniel Harris. He's on your side there with that. I suppose it makes sense. The numbers thing is the main. You bump into more Liverpool fans if you're a Man United fan than you do City fans.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, not every Manchester United fan is well versed on the intricacies of what it's like to live in Manchester. So that probably takes away the hatred for City quite a bit.
Right. I can legitimately say this is one of the best competitions we've ever had in the 20 years we've been doing shows here. Calling all cycling enthusiasts and indeed sports fans, Skoda are the official main partner of the Tour de France, and to celebrate on OTB Sports we have a once-in-a-lifetime giveaway. This prize is a VIP trip to stage 13 of the Tour de France from the 14th to the 16th of July, including flights and accommodation for one winner plus a partner. All you need to do for a chance to win is to be available to travel from the 14th to the 16th of July. And you also have to enter. Just let us know who this Carrick-Insure cyclist is who famously won the final stage of the Tour de France in the year 2020.
And then, I just couldn't believe it happened. And then, the picture where I'm looking at the big screen, it was like, did this just happen?
Let us know who that is by tweeting @OffTheBall with your answer. Each daily winner will win €100 one-for-all voucher and a Skoda cycling jersey. And you will go into the draw for the grand prize. Best of luck. Skoda drivers, for another chance to win, check out skodaservice.ie. Sarah Dunham's going to join us in a moment, just after this.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
A couple of steps forward and a couple of steps backwards, really.
Munster legends Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs are joining forces to bring you all the latest analysis, news, interviews and so much more.
I think for Munster, for them, in order to get a performance and a result, they need to concentrate on how well they've played over the last 8 weeks, since that kind of post-Six Nations window.
The Red 78 with Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now.
This is Sport Ireland Campus, and here is where it all starts. From the little ones learning to the high-performance athletes leading. Here we go to play, to practice, to progress. Here is where communities in the nation come together to compete, to win, and to belong. Here we go to the next level, then on to the world stage. This is Sport Ireland Campus, and here we go. Visit sportirelandcampus.ie to be a part of it.
Paddy? I go, what? It was Paddy Andrews. I go, yeah. And he goes, this is James' house. He's upstairs. Will I get him?
The Football Pod with Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue are bringing the show on the road. The first stop for Ireland's biggest and best GEA pod will be the Royal Theatre in Castlebar on Thursday, June 2nd, as Paddy, James, Tommy and special guests dissect, analyse and celebrate Mayo football, as well as getting stuck into the runners and riders for Championship 2022. Tickets are €20 plus booking fees and are on sale now. See otbsports.com/events for more.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
25 minutes past 8 this morning. I think I'm beginning to see a pattern. We've stacked the show full of Cork people today. Did you notice that, Eoin, on the anniversary of Saipan? Sarah Donovan, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm delighted that you're talking about Roy again. You can never talk about Roy enough.
So you're obviously Team Roy.
Since the age of 8. Massive United fan.
And what's your recollection of the whole shit show?
I remember Roy being right then. Didn't like Mick after that. And I'm going to stand by it now.
Sure, look, I'm in.
You can't not trust the feelings you had as a child, like.
Look, I just remember his outrage and his upset, and that stayed with me then. And I said, well, he was right. They didn't have footballs. What were they supposed to do?
And was this a formative moment in your own sports following career?
Well, never trust a manager,
Well,
essentially, it's always player led. I've decided that now. It has been to my detriment at times, where you probably should trust the manager. I know Taggy was on yesterday talking about managers ruling with an iron fist, and I was saying, oh Jesus, I wouldn't be good in that dressing room. Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed to work okay for that group of Kilkenny players, which brings us nicely to Kieran Kingston and the Cork management setup, who are now the best management setup in the country, apparently, over the last couple of weeks. What's changed before we get into what should happen and what's likely to happen?
I think we were talking about them being more direct, and I think the players are trusting each other more as well. I'm of the opinion that this is player-led. I was going to say that obviously based on everything I've just said before, but I just feel like the players are actually trusting each other more and they're demanding more of each other. So even the last day late on in the game, right, Cork are winning it by a cricket score, and Seamus Harnedy goes to give a ball to Dara Fitz. Dara Fitz doesn't move into the right pocket. Seamus Harnedy had an option. He was going to score. He obviously chose to go with Dara. The ball gets turned over, and Seamus' reaction to Dara, he was really pissed off with him. He just really wanted him to be in the right position. And I suppose I hadn't seen that before from the Cork setup, where they were demanding more of each other, and they're 12 points up.
They're cranky, but in a good way.
Really cranky, yeah, which is a great way to play because you get so much more out of your team.
Are you taking some of the credit for the crankiness, given that you were one of the leading voices going, this shower, they're not trying a leg, what's going on?
Work great. Connolly Han is the epitome of work great, and he scores 6 points again the last day in the first half. As I said last week, he's like Lazarus, every game he's getting better and better, and I wonder, is that because it was being taken away from him? And you look at Tim O'Mahony, goal merchant, scores a class goal again the last day. He just loves to run forward. He's so direct. They've changed 3 or 4 things, and they've been huge in the last 3 weeks.
Are you giving the management team no credit for that?
Look, they've obviously been listening to the pundits. The management aren't, naive. They're being offered opportunities to change, and they have the players who are there to change, and the players are versatile, they're flexible, but the players are also incredibly skillful. So the management can adapt, and they have.
I'm always in two minds about this, where the performances that we've seen from Seamus Harnedy this year are better than we've ever seen, I would say. It certainly feels like is he 29? He's fulfilling all of the potential that we thought was there. Conor Lehan has come back. It was weird seeing the scoring. It was Lehan and Harnedy. I was like, hang on a second, what year is this?
2013, because that's what it feels like.
I don't know, it feels like Kingston is actually a player's manager in that he doesn't have an iron, certainly from the outside. It doesn't feel like he is running with an iron fist. He's not Brian Cody.
No.
And whatever changes have been made, maybe they were made in consultation with the players or not, but there's a humility from a manager to allow that to happen.
And I agree with you on that. I think the players they don't play with fear, because some of the things they were trying to do in the second half the last day, if they were playing with fear, they wouldn't be trying those things. They were still overplaying the ball. And I don't think they feel like they're going to be punished for that. So there is a nice, I suppose, serendipity between the players and the management, and it does feel like they do listen to each other. So that is a positive in this year's campaign.
And the other thing about the round robin, the other thing about the round robin is that previously, before the round robin, when the back door was there, we have seen teams get absolutely annihilated in Munster and then go on through the back door and have a great run. You think of Isaki's hat-trick. I was like, oh, this is amazing, but then it didn't actually lead to anything, although Tip have a couple of times been absolutely annihilated. Is that now in this Cork team psyche that not being in the Munster final is frequently the best way for you to go if you can keep that sense of confidence building? You train, there's a nice handy match for you in the middle of it, and you arrive absolutely ready in a quarter-final against a team who's just coming off a beating.
I wonder in any other year would that be relevant, but with Limerick looming for everybody, it just feels like you can go so far. So this Cork team getting as much out of themselves as they can, but ultimately, if you want to win the All-Ireland, you have to face Limerick. And for everyone, that's the case.
Yeah. Would you rather face them in a final, or would you rather face them in a situation where they've been beaten by Clare in the Munster final?
I cannot tell you the level of depression. Actually, I can, because you had me on the following morning last year. I barely got out of bed. An All-Ireland final is not the place to meet Limerick for this Cork team. I think they have to do it in a slightly less imposing, less pressure environment, and I would rather do it in a semi-final, I think.
It's the time not to get, the semi-final rather than losing against Clare. The time off that Limerick would have before an All-Ireland semi-final would be probably where they'd be at their most vulnerable.
Think so?
I think so, because if they lose to Clare,
they've just been pretty good at it over the last number of years.
Yeah. The only thing is that they did get caught in a semi-final. One year they did get caught.
I mean, it should have gone to extra time. There should have been a free. They should have equalised. They should have gone to extra time. They probably would have been. Yeah.
I just think that I would rather, based on the experience of Cork last year, to do it earlier in the campaign, to meet Limerick earlier in the campaign. I just don't think this Cork team is built for another All-Ireland final like that, and the pressure that was put on them last year.
Okay, so you are still obviously damaged by last year's All-Ireland final, and we have to assume that the Cork psyche is at the moment. But is there something happening over the last couple of weeks that makes you think, okay, hang on a second?
We're still missing a wing back. There was just a couple of moments the last day where, despite Cork's dominance, there was space. Tipperary opened up a couple of times, and I just went, oh, it's like, why isn't he going there? Why doesn't he see the danger? They weren't reading the danger the last day, and against better teams, against Galway, against Limerick, I think Cork will be opened up much faster. We went 1-3 to no score down. I actually thought that Patrick Collins had saved the penalty from my vantage point in the stand.
I think a lot of people did.
Yeah, and that would have put them 7 clear. So it's just that sense of naivety. They're like, oh, we love to hurl, but we don't necessarily see the danger. You'd love to have seen what
would have happened if the penalty had gone in, right?
100%.
I mean, we would certainly as neutrals, just to see if they could have come back from that, because the performance subsequently was really spectacular, and it comes off the back of a really good performance as well. So where's the confidence? Where are this team? If you were to power rank, you clearly have Limerick first. You mentioned Galway there. Would Clare also be at Galway's level at the moment, or?
I think so. I think Limerick, Clare, Galway, and then you're looking at Cork. I think Kilkenny to lose at home to Wexford. That was the first time Wexford had ever won in Nolan Park. They've lost twice. They're still in the Leinster final. Their scoring threat isn't the same. I think they only scored 3 points from play the last day. Just not motoring the same way as Galway. And then Galway had to bring on Johnny Cohen, Evan Nyland, Jason Flynn, much more in terms of an attacking presence than Kilkenny have.
Can I just ask, just on Cork and fear, you said that they're playing without fear at the moment. Could you not make a case that playing through the lines at the start is actually emblematic of not playing with fear, because they're not afraid of getting turned over in their own half, they're not afraid of making an error, and in actual fact it is that fear of screwing up in their own half that has actually driven them to play a more direct style of hurling over the last few weeks?
That's a very tough question, actually. I genuinely felt like they understood each other better as a group the last 2 games, and they were trusting in Alan Connolly. The players themselves were going, oh, hang on a second, this guy can motor, so let's give him the ball. Let's give Hoggy the ball. Let's give Dara Fitz the ball. Robbie Flynn. They're looking for each other. They're looking to play, and the player in the best position was getting the ball rather than keeping to a strict let's play through the lines. So I would say moving away from that idea of having to play through the lines shows them playing without fear.
So what's the ceiling? The ceiling is being beaten by Limerick whenever they come up against them at the moment, but giving them a much better game than last year.
They're still missing a wing back. There's just a couple of areas that they don't have ready yet. They really need another wing back. Mark Coleman's fine, Joyce is fine. That third wing back position is key, and
so that's going to stop them.
That's going to stop them.
But that's progress from last year.
I don't think so. I think they should be further down the track with this management team, and that's why I'm a little disappointed.
Is the reality potentially here that we now have a top 2 in Munster and that Clare and Limerick are ahead of the pack? Obviously Limerick on their own, Clare in second on their own, and that's actually just what happened to Cork in the first couple of weeks.
I'd agree. I was at the Clare game. I thought the Clare were far more tactically astute than Cork, and I wonder how Cork are going to bridge that gap, you know, if they do have to meet them in the next couple of weeks. So I do think that Brian Lohan and John Kiley have a better setup, and being player-led in Cork can only take you so far. You need a management team to be able to plug in as well.
Okay, what is there anything that this current management team can do that would allay your fears, or do you feel like this is as far as they can take them?
This management team can only take them this far.
Okay.
But they are going to have to look for 3 or 4 more players.
Look, I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe those players do exist and they're not currently with the setup at the moment. But maybe this is just the playing stock that's available.
This is the playing stock available, but if you look at the minor and under 21 teams, under 20 teams that came through in the last 2 years for Cork, big wins in the All Irelands, the players will be there, but they need time to bed in. I just don't think this current management team are the team to take them there.
Okay, so from your perspective, almost irrespective of what happens, unless obviously they win in All Ireland, it's
still building, lads.
And how patient are the Cork hurling fans at the moment? Because you were pretty impatient earlier in the year. Is the patience coming back a little bit?
No. Look, I'm looking at it from the point of view of Seamus Hannity and Connolly possibly, you know, their last or second last years, and we're going to have to find new players to replace those players again. We're kind of running out of time because we have Hoggy, Hannity, Lehan. These players have a lifespan, and how quickly can we get those new players in? If you look at Tip without the Mahers, without Seamus Callanan, really struggled this year. You can't replace that experience in a dressing room.
Could you make the case that the difference there is that those Tip players have proven that they can get over the line in All Ireland, and those Cork players have never proven it regardless of the management that they've had?
Agree. I think 2019 though was kind of a special year for Tip against the run of play. They won that All Ireland, so that group of players, you're right, that group of players in terms of what they've achieved is unrivaled. That particular Tip team, massive experience, and that's why it hasn't been replaced.
Because my kind of thought maybe last year, especially after Limerick hockeyed Cork in the final, was that actually this crop of Cork players maybe just won't get over the line, and it is, as you mentioned, the minor and under 20 teams. It's about the current crop ushering them through, and if they manage to win an All Ireland out of nowhere, unbelievable. But in reality, it actually is the next generation that can say to themselves, well, we've beaten Limerick at underage level, we've won these championships at underage level, we know how to win. Whereas these current Cork seniors that are in the twilight of their careers just can't say that it is about the future.
It has to be about the future. I know that Taggy was talking about Tip and catching them in the 5 in a row. You know, the Tip team have done it, whereas this Cork team have had ample opportunities 2013, 2018, and they've always been the second best side. They've been the runner-up and, you know, bridesmaids for their entire careers.
Players catapult into that same tier, I think, is down to the personnel that's available to them. But if Clare and Cork met 3 weeks in a row over the next 3 weeks, I'd say it's 50-50 at this stage, given the form that the Cork are in at the moment.
It was a 2-point game when they played a few weeks ago. Like, it wasn't a
and I do think something's turned around in Cork
2 late goals
as well.
for Cork though, lads.
Well,
let's be honest. But if you look at what Clare did the last day against Limerick, they, 6 players brought in. Brian Lohan said, lads, their game, or this place is here up for grabs, let's go for it. And those 6 players came in and went hell for leather. Cork wouldn't have that depth to be able to change 6 different players and then expect them to go toe to toe.
No, and it's interesting that Lehan has come back in and is performing at the level he's at. So look, it's going to be interesting. There are some big games ahead. Where do you think is going to be the end of the road for this Cork team at the moment?
If they meet Galway.
Okay.
I think Galway will be too physical and also have the firepower up front.
And after the weekend, so it sounds like you think Galway are going to win Leinster?
I do, based on what I saw the last weekend between Wexford and Kilkenny. I just think they look a little tired.
It's going to be interesting to see the handshake and and the level of obsession that Cody has over the next couple of weeks for winning that game. And then who's going to win Munster?
Limerick.
Will it be close?
I think it'll be 6 points. I think Limerick are they've had a lot of time over the last 4 weeks to look at how Clare play, and Clare have showed them a lot about the way they play.
All right, Sarah, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us today. It's 8:42, 8:41. We're talking rugby with Matt Williams on tomorrow's programme. Jordan Larmour's form at the weekend has catapulted him back into many conversations around team selection, potentially even from an Ireland perspective. The full chat here between Fiona Hayes and Jerry Thorney is available on our YouTube channel and on the OTB Rugby podcast stream. Have a quick look at this.
Has Jordan Larmour forced his way into the European Cup Final 23, Jerry? It's a good question. If anybody has last Saturday night, it was him, wasn't it? It was a timely reminder, lest we forget of what an extraordinary one-off player he is. There's really no other player quite like him in Irish rugby. Probably the nearest thing to him in the last 10 or 12 years was probably Luke Fitzgerald. That kind of acceleration and quick feet, and Larmer's even more kind of mesmerising, slaloming kind of. I mean, he was making everybody else look like they were jogging on the spot at times. It was his own teammates, never mind the opposition. It got to be a little faintly ridiculous. There was a point in the second half when he got the ball and he kicked it, and you can always hear the audible groan from the crowd. Jordan, you weren't born to kick the ball, lad. You were born to run with it. So, yeah, he provides an X factor if you were chasing a game with 15, 20 minutes to go. He's your classic number 23 as well, isn't he? He can play fullback, he can play either wing, he can play 13. He's done so for Ireland, didn't he? I think didn't he play at the Twickenham Grand Slam match, some of that match at 13?
Yeah.
So, he's the ideal fit for 23. He didn't play for 10 weeks. He looks like he's as fresh from as he possibly could be. There aren't that many players in Irish rugby. There's really nobody quite like with that kind of X factor, that ability to just beat players in a phone box and to accelerate. And it's a real food for thought for them. I wouldn't be surprised if he does make 23. And the other one, of course, is Ryan Baird, given he can play both second row and back row, as he showed. I thought he had a very good, lively, rangy, typically athletic Ryan Baird type of game.
Right. That's the Jordan Larmour debate. You can hear the full thing on the OTB Rugby podcast stream. Subscribe to OTB Rugby. Search that on whatever podcast app you use. The best one is the OTB Sports app, by the way. At 8:43, John Duggan. Good morning to you.
Jaron Owen, how are you doing?
Happy 20th Saipan anniversary.
I was doing a lot of reading and watching the last few days, Jaron. I saw yourself standing up at the press conference.
Is there footage?
I don't know, just a photo of you in your, I think it was a red jumper.
There it is, of course, on screen, the red zippy, the earring. A good time. By the way, Brendan O'Brien of the Irish Examiner is standing over your shoulder, who hasn't aged one bit in 20 years. Incredible.
No.
What does this image say to you?
What does it say to who?
To you, Joe. Scoop.
Look, it's like the wireframe notebook. Like, no more wanky kind of self-indulgent journalist. Look at us all with our little notebooks, like I handed out. Like, look at me, I'm a proper journalist. Look at us.
How many piercings did you have?
Hey, none of your business. Visible or invisible?
Some questions you just don't want to ask on the morning show.
There is video footage.
I had an eyebrow piercing, which was gone by that stage.
That's a shame. I wish we saw that. And what age are you there?
24.
24, okay.
No, just turned 25.
There is video footage. It's just very, very shaky. There's like a kind of an online video on YouTube. Where it's like it just kind of glances past you.
Oh,
they're jotting into your shorthand.
Yeah, well, that press conference is really the public birth of John Delaney as an important character in Irish football, because for whatever reason he decided he's going to be front and centre and he's going to face the music. At that point, he'd kind of been floating around the background, but had never really been in the public's consciousness.
No, well, he was there at the light of the long knives when his dad, Joe, left the FAI in Mariongate, 96, and he got onto the board in about 2001 as treasurer. But I was listening back the other day. This press conference was quite quickly arranged. It was on the day that Roy was sent home, this press conference, because the news broke about 11 a.m, between 11 and 12 Irish time. The news broke on the Thursday, the 23rd of May, which was yesterday, 20 years ago. And by the evening bulletin, which I was on Today FM, Delaney had already done his press conference, backing Mick and the FAI support the decision for Mick to send Roy home.
What's your recollection of the how the story was being covered and breaking?
It was confusion was the big thing. So the Tuesday, Cathal Dervin had a website. I can't even remember the name of it, but he had a website. And on the Tuesday, he broke the story on the website that Roy had the row with the goalkeepers, Alan Kelly and Packy Bonner. And then the last word on Today FM started getting text messages that Roy was going home. And this was obviously rumour, and there was no kind of RTE or any other sense that he was going home. And, obviously Eamon Dunphy was writing the book on Roy Keane at the time, so there's a huge amount of confusion. Then on the Wednesday, it emerged that Roy had decided to go home, but then had changed his mind. And the Wednesday was the day he sat down to do the interviews with Tony O'Donoghue, with the Irish Times and with the Sun Independent. And that's then when it all blew up. So on the Tuesday, he decided to go home. He'd had enough of Mick, it seemed. I'd had enough of the arrangements. Ferguson and his family persuaded him to change his mind. It was all going to be sorted. Then he did the interviews. And then on the Thursday, Mick, was downloaded the interviews and then, called a meeting. So on the Thursday, I came into work at midday and the receptionist told me Roy Keane's been sent home. And I just thought to myself, oh my God. And the first thing I did, I rang Frank Stapleton, I rang Mark Lawrenson and rang Kevin Sheedy and just got them all to just give their reaction because it was breaking. But the confusion was the big thing that I remember from the whole week because it's an 8-hour time difference. Technology was nowhere near where it is now. And then for the next few days, it was, will he, won't he? Can we find a way of resolving this? But once again, the Mick McCarthy press conference with the players was like about half an hour after the row happened or something like that. So that was very hastily arranged. I remember I rang Michael Kennedy at one stage and I got through to him. I was so stunned that I got through to him. I was almost speechless.
What did he say?
I just asked him, some kind of.
He was saying nothing.
He's saying nothing. Yeah, but I actually got through to him was amazing, really.
So you're making the same calls at the time, Ger?
Yeah. I think that you would have different pundits from us, and like we were only a local station. You guys were national at that point. Sworn competitors and rivals, as in you didn't even know we existed basically because we'd started a month previously. Like we started in April, and this is May 24th. So I'd say we were 6 weeks in operation, and literally the biggest story in the history of Irish sport is.
Well, that then gives you then this brilliant way of starting your off the ball career.
Well, that's the thing. So what's the infrastructure of off the ball at that time? You're a month in. And so John's coming into the office at 12 o'clock. Is the show 7 to 9 on Newstalk at that point? Are you coming in around midday and that time difference thing is kind of hitting you in the face when you come into the office those mornings that week?
I'd say I was in a bit earlier, like a kind of 10 a.m. start. Like I lived 6 minutes from the office and it was my first month. So we were working all the time. But the Tuesday, the days of the week I'm not clear in my head at all, but the Tuesday is the row with the goalkeepers.
Tuesday's the row, Wednesday's the interviews, Thursday is the team meeting.
So, I remember
Friday, they left on Friday then to go to Japan to the proper training base.
I remember coming in to work on the Tuesday and I was like, oh, Roy Keane's leaving. Like that had definitely, and I said, no, that's definitely not happening. This is nonsense. And kind of just having this little sense of shock going, this isn't great. This isn't a great start to the whole scenario where we're supposed to be going to have like the time of our lives this World Cup. It's going to be unbelievable. Like
you Ken Early out there, did you at the time?
He wasn't in Saipan. He was going to Japan. So so we didn't have any reporters on the ground.
Yeah, we were the same. Like Michael McMullen was on the way to Japan. I'll never forget the feeling. It was as comparable to 9/11 in terms of the newsworthiness of the story. Now that was a tragedy, this was a farce, but the whole nation was convulsed. And I'll just say to anybody in any kind of job, the most important thing in any job is to do. You can have go to as many courses as you want in theory and all these kind of courses about journalism, broadcasting. When you're actually in it, you realise that doing in something is so much more important. Practice is so much more important than theory. Like I remember I was on the receiving end of invective in the office. It was an extremely tense time. It was just, you're immediately into crisis mode. And I'm a junior, observing this, but you see the whole newsroom, everybody's in crisis mode.
Were you head of sport?
No, it was Tim Toomey. So I was just a junior in the office, 7.5 months into the job, and you're kind of going to yourself, "Oh my God, I gotta wake up here, because this is the big leagues." And were you a reporter? Were you doing bulletins? I was doing bulletins, and because I was the only person doing the bulletins. I remember I did 22 bulletins the day of the Cameroon game. So I was the only person on the desk every day just doing the bulletins, and bulletins back then were
2.5-3 minutes.
Yeah, but they're also more important in ways than they are now. Like they're still important, but they were really very much a primary source of information for
because people didn't have the
smartphone technology now. So it was you're relying on a lot of just guidance from your mentor Tim Toomey, who was there at the time, and then Michael got over to do the reports from Japan, and then he took over the story, as it were. But Yeah, it was really, it changed so many things. It changed so many things. By the time Brian Kerr was in there, like 9 months later, like, the likes of Mick Byrne, Tony Hickey, none of these people were around with the team anymore. Then Roy came back. But, I just wish somebody, like whether it was a Bertie Ahern figure or whoever, had just went and just said publicly, guys, you got to sort this out. You got a duty to the country. Ireland is more important than your egos. You're both at fault. Sort it out, and we'll worry about it after the World Cup.
You mentioned you were in the big leagues. We can hear John Duggan in the big leagues that week on Today FM. Have a listen.
Time now for the Bulmer Sports headlines with John Duggan.
The FAI are supporting Mick McCarthy's decision to send Roy Keane home from Japan. Steve Staunton has now been appointed captain of the side. And in golf, Colm Montgomery leads the Volvo PGA Championship at Wentworth by 3 shots. More sport in full just after 6.
Sounded like a 10-year-old, but you did get the golf in. I got the golf in,
Yeah, you did sound very young, yeah.
The most important part of it. Today FM, obviously, with wall-to-wall coverage, as you mentioned, 22 bulletins a day over this week.
And the last word was appointment listening.
Absolutely. We have Eamon Dunphy here on Today FM at the time. Have a listen.
The captain of the Irish soccer team and the greatest player we've ever had has been sent home from the most important occasion that Irish soccer has ever had to face. It's a monumental blunder on McCarthy's part. This is not a case of someone being caught with a lap dancer or with anything of that nonsense. This is a man who has spoken and has earned the right to speak and has got us to the World Cup single-handed. It's an absolute farce.
Now, Mick McCarthy obviously felt undermined. Did he feel personally threatened by Roy Keane, do you think?
I think so, and I think that's probably been a recurring feature of McCarthy's stewardship and Keane's relationship with him, because you have to think that Roy Keane's captain of Manchester United, Sir Alex Ferguson, who is the most renowned manager of our time, gives Keane the respect and the freedom to speak his mind, and we all know that he does that, and there's no problem there. But McCarthy is an insecure, a figure of much less stature, and he owes a lot to Roy Keane. And if this is the way he's chosen to repay him, in order to establish his own bona fides as a manager, well, then he's a fool, because managers are supposed to manage problems, not create them.
And we all know there's no problem there, and there'll never be a problem between Sir Alex Ferguson and Roy Keane, because they love each other. Like the love that they have for each other knows no ends. Ian, and there'll never be a problem there. Roy will always be able to say whatever he wants with Alex Ferguson, and they will die friends. That's
It was Ian Noctor, of course, in conversation with Eamon Dunphy there. Dunphy using the same lines repetitively that week is one of my favourite parts. Like Eileen Dunn had him on the lunchtime news probably that day, and it's like, you didn't get caught with a lap dancer. That was.
If you're going to be consistent, if you have a good line, use it consistently. I'd say he was everywhere, because he was on us a good bit around that time as well. Right. Dara Whelan, our producer, knew him somehow and had been able to get him on. And the other thing is, like, he's phoning into his own show there. Like, because he was in RTE the whole time doing the TV coverage. I'd say the Today FM bosses were delighted that Dunphy was a central character, but would have been even happier if he was presenting his own show.
Well, he was gone a couple of months later out of Today FM. But the last word, it was utter appointment listening. You had himself, John Giles taking a different view, Liam Brady and Mark Lawrence, and they pretty much took over the show every single evening.
Well, that's
when
the Giles falling out happens, and he joins News Talk.
And also, the National Lunchtime News was a 12:45 show until 1. Every single day, the whole 15 minutes was Roy Keane and Mick McCarthy. And then at the end of it, you'd have a 2-minute sports bulletin, and it'd be like me, like leading, or whoever would be leading with, okay, well, I've spoken to some other ex-Irish international who's got a view in it now.
Yeah.
As we try to find out what was going on.
We've got Dion Fanning on the line as well. Dion, good morning to you. How are you keeping?
Good, Eoin. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Is 20 years on for you something that kind of gives you this sort of sense of, oh God, we're doing this again? Or has this week been a sort of momentous occasion for you where you're like, okay, time to get all the laundry out there, it'll be good for me?
Well, I'm kind of struck by how everyone is kind of introducing it almost apologetically, like, oh God. But to me, it's still... There is, the details of it are kind of fascinating, are kind of interesting, and listening to that stuff is interesting. Like, the idea that we would relitigate it is pretty kind of boring for me. Like, I don't think it's a question of kind of going over what happened and trying to establish, the rights and wrongs anymore. But I do think there is, as far as I'm concerned, there's still that bit that people, like, when I wrote about this in the Currency at the weekend, that Keane as a changed person, that was the thing that still is kind of underplayed. Like this idea that this was Roy Keane, who 2-3 years previously was getting into all kinds of scrapes, if you like. You know, there was things happening in, you know, you look back to when Manchester United won the league in 1999, and 2 days later, Alex Ferguson is getting Keane out of a police cell in Manchester. These were the events that Keane has written about to a certain degree that were happening in his life, and which, when Saipan came along, weren't happening. And, you know, Niall Quinn wrote it in his autobiography about the barbecue in Saipan, talked about how Roy hasn't been drinking at this stage, so we make a show of going to bed. Everyone, like in Quinn now, whether it's embellished or not, Quinn talks about players pretending to be tired and yawning before tiptoeing out for their all-nighter in the Beefeater, and Keane being apart from that. Now, Keane has always spoken about how he had no problem with that, and I would believe him, because one of the things that has kind of been part of his post-Saipan life and his post-managerial life has been this sort of romanticizing of the old school football ways. But at the same time, here he was trying to kind of be somebody different to who he would have been 5 or 6 years previously when he would have been in the Beefeater. He would have been with them, and he wasn't. And the tension and the pressure that brought on him, I think we've never really fully grasped Saipan in terms of that. It didn't matter what happened. It didn't matter if they'd gone to, you know, somebody showed, like there was a letter from the Japanese ambassador, the Irish ambassador to Japan at the weekend, saying, why did Ireland go to Saipan? This would probably have happened wherever there was. If it wasn't balls, if it wasn't pitches, if it wasn't what the details were on this instance, it would have been something else. And that's the thing I don't think fully is still grasped 20 years later. So when we start talking about who, you know, if we start talking about who was right or who was wrong, it's not really the debate.
That Keane almost put himself into this sense of isolation on a mental sense, and even kind of in the physical makeup of, say, the team hotel at that point, and when he kind of speaks about players not coming to his door to wish him well before he flies home, that kind of speaks to a greater sense of isolation and separateness from the team that perhaps we haven't quite got to the bottom of.
No, but it's still no. We got. I don't know if we could. Like, Keane always talks about this in terms of, and I remember asking him about this when he launched his second book about giving up drinking and talking about it as a lifestyle choice, and that's what how he's always spoken about it, and that's how we have to take it, because that's how he's spoken about it. I would look at people in similar situations and think, God, that's it. Like, it seems to do a more fundamental adjustment to you than just deciding I'm going to eat more like steamed vegetables, or I'm going to do more, you know, I'm going to do more yoga. All these things which Keane did as well. But I think he talked about the foreign players and their influence. But it was his lifestyle. If you talk about it in terms of lifestyle, it was such a fundamental readjustment. Like, this is a guy who, during his injury, was banned by Alex Ferguson from going to the Manchester United Christmas party. And more than that, the rest of the Manchester United team were told that if they were seen drinking with Roy Keane on the night, they would be fined. Like, this is a central part of his life, which he then removes. And I think it's an incredible story that he removes it. But I don't think we fully grasped it. Like, I love all the details. I love listening to Dunphy talking about it. Like, this is stuff, because I was, you know, this is stuff I hadn't heard, but I'm also struck by like the potency of the people. And this was something I remember thinking at the time, the potency of the people Keane had in his corner. You know, he had Eamon Dunphy on, as you pointed out, everywhere, arguing, getting the message across, talking about, you know, Keane in these heroic terms. He had Alex Ferguson in his corner, who, let's be honest, probably was quite happy when Keane was coming home from Saipan. And the FAI and Mick McCarthy couldn't compete with it on a PR basis in that sense. And then, you know, even when you go, and this is the thing I think is also sometimes overlooked. You look at that Tommy Gorman interview, and Keane looks like Robert De Niro in The Godfather Part 2. He's so striking and magnetic, and this was a huge part of his attraction, that he was actually a hugely charismatic person, and I think that's something that is often overlooked. I'm also reminded, when I started talking about Keane in terms of that, I remember I got a letter around about a month after Saipan into the Sunday Independent where I work, saying we just want to wish Dion Fanning all the best with his forthcoming operation. Hopefully the advances in modern medicine and skilled surgeons can remove his tongue from Roy Keane's arse. So I always remember that one. So again, so it's but then somebody at the weekend tweeted me saying, you're not on Roy Keane, or maybe you won't be against Roy Keane anymore. So who knows what? But I think they're the things that I think about now. But I do find the details of it. I don't know how people feel about it. I find the details of it still interesting. I find how it convulsed us is kind of fascinating too, and the way it took over everything is kind of extraordinary.
Did you have to fist fight Paul Kimmage for him to be allowed to go to Saipan instead of you? How did that play out?
I didn't know. I think that was. I don't remember. I don't remember. I remember being quite relaxed about not going to Saipan.
It was so irrelevant. Nothing is going to happen here. Well, no one needs to go to this.
I was on the next flight. I was on a flight with Paul Howard, John O'Brien. I think David Walsh was on that flight. We were on the next, and a few other. I've a memory of Vincent Hogan being on it, but I'm not sure about that. Maybe Vinny was in Saipan, but I remember being at the airport on the Thursday morning. We were flying out on the Thursday morning, and the Irish Times interview. We were reading the interview in Dublin Airport, and again, how things have changed. That was Thursday morning, reading that interview with no kind of prior awareness of it, really. Whereas now you would know about that for since the Wednesday night. But reading it in Dublin Airport, and I remember reading it, kind of going, yeah, this is very interesting, but it seems okay.
Yeah.
And then we were changing at in Schiphol in Amsterdam for the flight to Tokyo, and we landed at Schiphol, and the message came through that Keane was gone, and the next 12 hours, I just remember, again, just mirroring everything everywhere. The next 12 hours was just conversations, endless conversations about what this meant. And I can remember just spending hours in a just standing up on the plane talking with Paul and David Walsh. I just remember the three of us and maybe a couple of other people just talking about it for hours, what this meant. But again, in a total vacuum, because we were 12 hours in the air, and then landed in Tokyo, and then flew to Izumo, where the Irish team had flown that day as well, because they had obviously left on the Friday morning. They'd left before Keane did. They'd left Saipan on Friday and flown to Izumo. But no, I don't remember. Thinking there was anything, there was much point in it. As a Sunday paper, you probably thought there's no point in sending two people to Saipan. Nothing will happen there. And that was one of the things that became striking over the next week, that there were even that week, I was looking back at it last week, Damien Duff said something as they left from Izumo, there was this talk about let's draw a line under it here. We've had a turbulent week, but it's time now to look forward, and let's not talk about Saipan anymore. And throughout that week, they were kind of this is it now, lads, we'll put this to bed. And if I fast forward for a minute, I remember being at the Stadium of Light at the end of August in 2002, when Manchester United were playing Sunderland, and before the game, as both teams were on the pitch warming up, Sunderland had a welcome home ceremony for all their players who had been at the World Cup, which was basically Niall Quinn, Jason McAteer, Kevin Kilbane, and Roy Keane is warming up on the other side on the other side, and ends up, getting sent off. Niall Quinn tries to shake his hand as he goes off. Alex Ferguson tells him to get lost. And I remember thinking, we're not done with Saipan. We're never going to be done with Saipan.
Yeah, like the France game.
Here we are.
Remember the rant after the France game? That was all Saipan.
Yeah, the legacy of it. Like, I mean, the FOMO on that playing Dion, I think, is probably more than any journalist has ever appreciated. Like, I'm interested. Like, Roy Keane, in a clip we're about to play in a little while, in the DVD he brings out in 2002, refers to Paul Kimmage as a journalist he really respects and somebody he would given an interview to. Had the tables been turned, would you have secured that interview for the Sunday Independent if you were the man sent to Saipan?
Well, I think at that stage, Keane talked to a couple of journalists, and I think one of them was Paul Kimmage, which is why Paul would have been going to Saipan.
Okay. You had yet to build up that relationship.
Well, I don't think I ever built up that relationship. I think, there were, the relationship I ever had with Keane was always, it was fine. Like But I would never say I had. I think the people who built up the relationship with him in those years prior, and Paul wrote about this at the weekend, like the years prior to that, doing interviews. I think they built up that relationship then, and he became I had interviewed him once. I had interviewed him once before Saipan, and that was, again, I was funny. Like, it was very easy to get him to agree to the interview, and then it was actually when United were playing Barcelona in the Champions League, in Barcelona in '98, and he said, "Yeah, come along to the hotel and do it," and then actually finding anyone who was aware of this or agreed. I remember Manchester United saying, "We don't know anything about this. He's not doing the interview," and getting a little. I just hung around the team hotel for about 6 hours. When Keane came down to go for dinner, he said, "What are you doing here?" And he gave me some abuse for wasting his time. And then I hung around the hotel a bit longer. And he came out after his meal and walked straight across to me. And I thought, oh, God, I'm going to get it again here now. And then, very like Paul mentioned the thing, he didn't apologise, but he said kind of, I was a bit gruff there with you earlier. And he sat down and did an interview then. So everybody experienced the two sides of Keane, but I think Paul would have. I don't think it would have been as easy for anyone else to secure it, or as it was for Paul Kimmage.
Can we just go back to the bit you were saying that relitigating kind of misses the point? Is it your view that something was going to blow up anyway, and whether or not it was big enough to self-sabotage his appearance at the World Cup is really all that's up for grabs in the discussion?
Yeah, more or less. I think there are. Yeah, I would say, without knowing, and we don't know everything, I don't think, but I think the stuff we don't know is stuff that is going on in Roy Keane's head, which he is, as is his right, chosen to keep private. I don't mean anything salacious in that. I mean just how really he was feeling. I think it would have been something. I think that sense of Keane just being a powder keg was just something that was going to happen. Like Alistair Campbell, I remember referred to Keane as, I remember him saying about Keane, he says he's a bit like me, he's a little dry drunkish, which means somebody who is not drinking, but also still has a lot of kind of anger and is just can explode at any moment. And I think that was what you were witnessing in Saipan. So if it wasn't what happened, if it wasn't those details, it may have been something else. Now we can go into, there are things you look back on and go, they're crazy, like having the, I'm regretting actually saying this because it's like, we are going to relitigate it, but having the team meeting didn't seem to be the right way of managing this situation. But I would say, especially given where you probably should have understood where Keane was, there might have been a way of managing it. I don't think so. I think it was potentially wherever they were, whether they were, if they weren't in Saipan, if they were in Japan, if they were in Izumo, which had beautiful facilities, if they'd been there for 2 weeks, would something have happened? I think, we don't know, but I think there's a high degree of likelihood something would have happened.
For sure. Let's just quickly play that clip then from As I See It, the 2002 DVD from Roy Keane. You can see a picture there sporting the Ray-Bans, at the time style icon Roy Keane. Here's a clip from that DVD.
I've been frustrated for many years now regarding with the Irish setup. I made a few points over there and a lot of people weren't happy with that, and ended up with an argument with the manager because I think the buck stops with the manager. I think it's his job to make sure things are right for the team, and it wasn't, and I said it, and there you have it. I'm in Portugal on my holidays. I couldn't believe we went to Saipan to train when the island doesn't have a football pitch.
I must dig out that full DVD actually and watch the full thing. Dion Fanning, great stuff. Thanks a million for being with us this morning.
Thanks, Eoin.
12 minutes past 9, we're going to be joined by David Connolly and Jason McAteer very shortly. So things are just getting good in our relitigation of the Saipan saga. We'll be back in a few.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The team of OTB are taking on a challenge that requires fitness, a challenge that demands months of training and preparation, a challenge that requires knowing when to push and when to focus on recovery. Triathlons aren't easy, but having a fitness coach helps.
Whoop are helping us non-athletes.
You need all the help you can get.
Yeah, as I was saying, helping us non-athletes feel like pros in our challenge to complete a triathlon this summer.
OTB Sports, in partnership with Whoop. Unlock your inner potential with Whoop, the personalised digital fitness and health coach that provides you with actionable feedback on your sleep, training, recovery and health. Check out whoop.com for more.
This is Sport Ireland Campus, and here is where it all starts. From the little ones learning to the high-performance athletes leading. Here we go to play, to practice, to progress. Here is where communities and the nation come together to compete, to win, and to belong. Here we go to the next level, then on to the world stage. This is Sport Ireland Campus, and here we go. Visit sportirelandcampus.ie to be a part of it.
Things that put people off on a first date. Showing up late and getting your name wrong? Always a great start. Looking at their phone more than you? Hello? Someone who only talks about themselves. Oh, really? God, aren't you great? Look, no one said dating is perfect, but at godating.ie, we promise we'll always try and find your perfect match. And if you sign up today, you'll get 1 week on godating.ie absolutely free. Yes, even you, socks and sandals guy. Go on, go for it with godating.ie.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, it's 9:15 this morning. We are talking about Saipan, I'm delighted to say. On the 20th anniversary, Jason McAteer and David Connolly are both with us. Gentlemen, good morning to you. No happier time do we as Irish football fans have than remembering Saipan. Jason, I'm sure you're very happy to be with us.
You know that programme, what was it, Room 101?
Yeah.
Where you could put things that you didn't like into the locker and they were gone forever. Well, mine would be Saipan, the white suits for Wembley, and probably Roy Keane.
Oh, Keane makes it all the way in. Right, you left the best one to last there. So obviously you've nailed your colours to the mast very quickly there, Jason.
It's just like, yeah, we've relived it a million times, and you know we're still going over it now. I know, like, and Dave's account of it will be different than mine 20 years on, I'm sure. You know, we all recollect in different ways, don't we, and pick out the bits that we want to remember. You know, I quite vividly know my story because I've told it a million times. I'd be interested to know what Dave's is actually, because I don't think I've heard Dave's. But I'll sit and wait
Well, let's go. You've come in here. You've got your presenter hat on, asking the best questions, making us feel a bit of shame. David Connolly, feel free to just answer Jason McAteer's question. How are you? Good morning to you. But go on, go for it.
Morning, guys. I mean, I look exactly like Jason. The reason is Jason probably hasn't heard is, and even when I was asked to do this, I have the same feeling as Jason. You know, come on, you know, it's tiresome to go over it, and you know, maybe my account is a little bit different, but my account is I guess pretty similar to everyone else's. Although I think in the Ireland squad at that time, like players like Jason, obviously were at the very, you know, competing on Roy's level, and I was maybe not quite there. So I would at times look up to players like Jason and Roy, you know, and I would probably give a lot of respect to those players, the ones that operating at the very highest level, and probably, you know, I know Jason maybe might say he didn't, you know, have Roy, how Roy was, but I think I would always try and look at those players and go, you know, right, okay, as a player, they had a lot of those players. I had an awful lot of respect for them, and I think, you know, for Roy, I guess I had a sense of loyalty to Mick because Mick was really good to me, but I also had a respect for players like Roy or Jason, you know, and I think, you know, for example, on the flight over, I sat next to Roy, and I remember when we got the plane tickets. I was putting my luggage down, and I turned around, and all the lads were looking at me as if, you know, you've got the short straw there, you know, 16 hours sitting next to Roy. But, you know, in effect, you know, like Roy, as Jason would tell you, maybe, you know, Roy could be great company. He could be fabulous company, very quick-witted. And actually, you know, the flight sort of zoomed by. And also, you know, we shared the same sort of solicitor. Don't get me wrong. Our solicitor, Michael Kennedy, would often tell me, I remember he told me once after an Ireland game, Roy says, we're carrying you. And you know, so like the respect was there, but there was also a mutual...
Go back to that. So Roy told Michael Kennedy with the kind of express intention of him telling you, Roy says we're carrying you.
No, not with the express intention, but obviously I would talk to Michael like every week.
Right.
And you know, you got to remember within the Ireland squad then there was probably, you know, at times you might be clinging on to a place in that squad, you know, because you know, in terms of
what about solicitor-client privilege, where he's like breaking Roy's privilege?
No. I think you took that. I think you took that because often the training pitch was a brutal place, right? If you can't handle it, you shouldn't be there. You know.
So it was friendly advice. It was friendly advice.
Yeah, I mean, look, Jason would tell you all this about wrapping the ball into the front. You know, are they able to handle it? All this sort of stuff. But cut a long story short, you know, I ended up sort of being in the room next to Roy. But one. And all these little things where, you know, you'd end up, he'd borrow a DVD or you know, there may be, Jason was at Liverpool, Roy was at United. I guess it was different, you know, that's why probably the stories are different. I could understand Roy's perspective, but also have loyalty to Mick. I think it was difficult for some players of the squad to be necessarily in one camp or the other. Do you get what I mean? I didn't agree with what Roy did. And ironically, Jason will probably tell this, but I was filming everything. I sort of did a video. Well, maybe
you could make millions out of that. We make a film.
Well, exactly right. So I've been asked this. So you probably can't remember, Jason, but I mean, Kenny would film. I don't know if you remember, Kenny was injured and I gave him the camcorder. And I was actually filming we're up in the room before the meeting was called. And we just the lads just messing around, training, playing cards, doing the usual sort of stuff, just for a bit of a laugh, you know. And we put the camera down, and obviously after the meeting, we're all kicked off. The same lads, I think it was Kevin Kilban, Shay, we all came back up into the same room, and they went, "Don't you dare put that camera on." You know, I am not talking. And you know, we were so close to sort of even having a camera, because it used to come everywhere, just for a bit of a, you know, just to. Yeah, remember, I've got to be honest, 20 years later, I have not looked at it. I couldn't even tell you where the cameras are, where the you know, the films are. But, you know, it was something for me, obviously, just to remember. And it was a great occasion to make the squad and make the World Cup. But I guess from my recollection, it might be slightly different to Jace, right? Because some players were in direct. They might be coming up against Roy and kicking 7 bells out of Roy, whereas maybe I wouldn't be because I was playing in a championship. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah. So you had a different relationship. As a matter of interest, did you all have individual rooms, or were you sharing rooms in Saipan?
We all, as Jason would tell, we all shared, like, apart from Roy, probably.
That's right,
yeah, I mean, we all had our set roommates, and to be honest, that was one of the best things. Probably after, I think we used to trash Jason's room or soak the bed, or the usual stuff you do as lads, messing around.
I had the short straw. I ended up rooming with Steve Staunton, so I used to get good night's sleep every night. Once he started talking about his Liverpool career and that, I was gone. I was away. Do you know what he used to do? Seriously, he used to ring his dad and be on the phone for hours, and he'd be trying to get to sleep. And obviously the time difference didn't help. And he'd be ringing his dad for hours, just talking about nothing. And I'd be like, Stan, any chance? We're training in the morning and, just got to sleep.
I thought Alan Kelly used to talk to his dog, didn't he? That's what I heard. I mean, whether that's true.
There's a few of them. Roy used to do that. I think the thing as well, I think it does sound like a bit like a witch hunt when we always talk about it, because it's an individual against the collective, isn't it? And we've all got our own opinions about whether it was right or wrong. And I think the bottom line is, I think as we grow older, we understand that, Roy had a point. What he was asking for or what he was demanding was to make things better, which obviously would, in his head, give us the opportunity to play better or to be better or prepare better or whatever it may be. So it probably was the best intentions. It was just how it was managed. It was just how it was put over. And you throw into the mix, we'd had a drink, I think, before the flight out to Saipan. We were allowed to go out. So, the flight then was long and tedious. It was difficult. We then landed. So on top of that, you're tired. And then, you know what you like when, you're tired. If things aren't going your way, then you get moody and you get narky. And, he quickly sort of fell off the cliff, really, in terms of where his head was. And he was rooming on his own, which I always think, they do it now, but I always think it's nice to have someone in the room to sound off to. Steve Staunton, I had a few moments in that campaign where, I wanted to go home, I got injured, and Steve Staunton sorted me round, or I had a problem maybe with one of the lads. I had a problem with Kenny at one point. Steve Staunton calmed me down. So Roy didn't have that. Roy went to four walls where he just stewed and festered and went over the points over and over and over. And in the end, it's like a kettle. It just blew up. And unfortunately, it was in a meeting with 24 lads and in front of the manager. So, the outcome is what it was.
And I think he does touch on that in the initial Irish Times interviews, where he kind of does allude to the fact that he is quite isolated in his room, but there are positives and negatives from his own mindset. But David, not to labour on the flight too much, but Jason does point to the fact that, that there was a couple of drinks had at the airport. Roy himself, was pissed off around a couple of leprechauns approaching him at the airport. That kettle had started to boil on that flight. So I'm interested, did you notice anything while sitting beside him on that flight?
No. And look, a lot of the lads, I can't remember, say, having a drink, but a lot of the lads, often the best players are the ones that could have a drink. And but I was certainly not one of them. I had to really, I was a little bit different like that, I didn't notice Troy have anything. What I can recall is that we played a five-a-side when we got there, and the goalkeepers, Jason would tell you this as well, the goalkeepers often they do individual work, right? So they go off and do an extra bit of handling, etc. But for Ireland, the key thing would be like at United, right, where they always played whatever 7-a-side, 5-a-side. Because I noticed, because when Roy took over at Sunderland, we would play a 7-a-side game every day, however many 8-a-side, 7. It doesn't matter, it would always be a small-sided game, right, with 2 goalkeepers and 2 goals. And there was a lot put on that game, like there would be in Ireland, because, again, Jason would tell you that we'd often have a vote at the end of training who was the worst player. And a lot of it would hinge on that game at the end. If someone, was taken to the cleaners. If somebody missed an open goal, they get voted for the worst player. Now, when we went to Saipan, we had a small-sided game played, and we had to play it without goalkeepers because the goalkeepers already worked themselves to the bone, and Paki had said that they weren't to play. Now, I can completely understand why Roy lost sort of his mind over that, because that's the one thing you look forward to, right? When you're a player, is then you do all the pre-stuff, and then you come to the game, and you don't play the game. And, so it just so happened, like, when that kicked off, I remember being right there. When it kicked off in the meeting room, I was sat next to Roy just by coincidence as you come in and sit down. So, but in a lot of ways, it could have been avoided. Like, it could have been avoided. The goalies should be ready to go and play in the game. Because ask the goalies, they want to play in the game as well, right? They don't want to flog themselves to death. And we don't want to play with no goalkeepers. I can't even remember if we played with an outfielder in goal or we just used poles or... I can't recall, but I can recall that it kicked off and it was because we didn't have goalkeepers, so that added to it.
Let's just play another clip from the Roy Keane DVD from later on in 2002. Again, here he is on the beach in Portugal, talking about talking about his teammates. You'd be delighted to hear this, David and Jason. Have a listen.
Just one or two players sitting in a press conference there, we couldn't believe it, and these lads, Muppets. There's only way I can describe them. To sit there and to say what they said about me. Hypocrites, these lads. Cowards. Cowards sums them up, and I mean that. I will not go back on that.
This DVD is recorded, I would say, weeks after Saipan, because it's in the summertime when he's on holidays in Portugal, and he's not, obviously he goes back training, and maybe a bit of injury, maybe there's a break later in the year, but it's literally in the immediate aftermath, probably while the World Cup is actually happening.
Yeah, well, I think he says in the DVDs, like, such and such happened, had to leave Saipan, now I'm in Portugal. So it does feel as if it's very, very immediate afterwards. So I'm not sure, like, Jason, when do you first become aware of this DVD and what he said in it?
I didn't even know there was a DVD. Is this his own DVD?
Yeah, Christmas, My Side, or what's it called?
Sorry.
My Story or something.
As I See It.
As I See It, yeah.
Jay, it must have gone in the stocking, Jace, that one, yeah? It must have gone in the Christmas stocking.
Must have.
I didn't even know there was a DVD. Oh, I'll have to watch that. Have a laugh.
A DVD and a book.
Wow. It must have been done straight after. He's obviously still fuming, isn't he? And he's obviously having a pop. I mean,
we do have a very similar clip from about 3 years ago where he says almost exactly the same thing. So,
oh yeah, he's over it then, yeah.
Exactly.
I ended up doing the press conference. I can't believe I got even asked to do it. I think it was me, Quinny, Stan, and I think maybe Alan Kelly might have done it. It was the senior pros in the thing. I didn't have anything to add. I was just sort of there. I don't even know why I was asked, to be honest, but I sat on the table, and Steve Staunton and Quinny's a politician, and he sort of batted all the questions off, really. But I felt there listening to it, he obviously felt a lack of support, didn't he? And like I said, we can all sit there and, like Dave said, and point fingers at goalkeepers not training, or the kit not arriving, or not going to Saipan, or not having a training pitch. But it is what it is, and sometimes you've just got to take it on the chin. And, when I used to come back to Anfield, and I used to listen to the England stories about what they used to get given, the training facilities, how they prepare for games. And it was so far removed from what we had under Jack, and even Mick. Staying in the airport hotel, training on the training pitch where the planes were going over, you couldn't hear tactics being shouted or teams being selected. We weren't really given anything. The kit was, you felt it was England's second kit because they were Umbro as well. It was kind of hand-me-downs kind of thing. But I always felt that's what made us the set of lads that we were. It kind of brought us together. It was a good team spirit, a good harmony we had in the camp. Because of these moments, we'd laugh about it. We'd just get on with it. It kind of made us, I think, the team we were, which was difficult to be, collectively very strong. We'd look after each other. We'd run through brick walls for each other. And in turn, that produces results. On top of that, we had a sprinkling of world-class talents in Duffer and Robbie, and the rest were made up of very, very good players. And I think Roy, coming from the Man United background with Sir Alex, was probably, very demanding for preparation and, meticulous when it comes to, to looking at things and doing things. And obviously it rubbed off on Roy. And plus the nature of what Roy was as a person, himself, he was, he demanded the best. And we've seen the best of him, just before kick-off, where he would demand the best performances from everyone on the pitch. But off it, he was always going to clash with different personalities. We clashed because of Liverpool, Man United. We clashed because we were the same age. We clashed because we were different personalities. It's just what it was. I'm certainly not a coward. If he's alluding to me, I'm certainly not a coward. But
did you? Am I not right in saying you actually did call to his room afterwards?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, but it wasn't to ask him to stay. He'd lent something off me, so I wanted it back. I
think you've told the story of what it was, Jason. I think it's okay. You can remind everybody who is unaware of what.
He borrowed a film off me, so
The English Patient, I think, wasn't it?
It's too early in the morning, Jerry. It's only 9:30. So I did knock on his door, and do you know what? It was, and Dave will tell you, you're sitting in this room. I'd never experienced anything like that. I'd experienced fights individually in the training ground, in the dressing room. I'd witnessed, other things that go on in football behind the scenes that you would raise an eyebrow now. But I'd never seen it go off just before a World Cup, in a national team with all the players, staff, management, everyone there, where, one player is screaming at the manager and the manager's shouting back, and it was just surreal. It was just absolutely surreal. And I don't think no one knew how to handle the situation. We talk about, Mick should have done this and Roy should have done that and the players should have done this. It's one of them moments you don't know until you're in it. And it kind of, the dust settled within minutes. I remember Dean Kiley cracking a joke about playing midfield. It kind of settled everyone. And then we all went off to our rooms. And like Dave said, it was, they were all sitting around, shocked, the younger players. They'd never witnessed it. So for me, I went into the room with Steve Staunton. We were talking about it, and I knocked on his door, and Mick Bain was in there trying to sort it out with him. And I honestly thought he'd be on the bus in the morning. I honestly thought he would be calmed down and he'd come on the bus with a tail between his legs. But we left it, I think 9 or 8 days was it in the morning, and that was it. It's gone. Well, that was done.
Yeah, I think we're all worried about him going off with our DVDs because he had one of mine as well. So I had to knock on his door. I think
I never got mine back.
We're worried about Blockbuster and a few fines.
It's like, Jason, you mentioned taking it on the chin. Taking it on the chin literally is something that I guess probably happened when you faced off against Roy at the start of the following season. And Dion was on with us a few minutes ago. I'm not sure, did he hear it? He was talking about that homecoming for the Sunderland players when Manchester United were in town, and obviously yourself and Roy got into a bit of a heated exchange during that match. Do you remember what sorry, yeah, the
stick it in your book, Roy.
Stick it in your book, yeah. Was everything that happened there clear for everybody to see? Was there anything that happened in the tunnel? What's your recollection from everything that happened on that afternoon and the spillover from Saipan?
Well, I knew he was going round because obviously we joined up a couple of times, and a few of the lads had stories about him going to, I think Matty Holland he'd been through Matty Holland, hadn't he, during a game? I don't know where it was, Charlton or Ipswich, wherever Matty was. I think Harty had got it as well in one game against Leeds. So we knew he was on the warpath kind of thing. Anyway, his book had come out the week that we played Man United, and it was a big game up at the Stadium of Light, full house. Man United coming to town is always a big occasion up there. And I went into the dressing room, and one of the lads had put his book on my spec, on my towel and shorts. So obviously we were all laughing about it. And I actually got one of the kids who were on duty, dressing room duty, to go and wait outside the dressing room and get it signed. So we went off and got it signed and come back. And anyway, we put it down. Anyway, I don't remember anything apart from the incident, which was I was playing centre midfield. it kind of ball bounced. Nothing had really happened. I think they'd scored, and I think I'd run off him and got the equaliser. I kind of went round the keeper and played the ball in and saw Andre Flo, I think, had scored a goal to equalise. And the stadium was up, and we were on top. And the ball bounced in the middle of the park, and he nipped round me and stuff, and I've grabbed him. We've both gone to ground and just come together. And he was telling me what he was going to do to me. He was going to rip my head off. He was going to do. I mean, he'd gone. Like the mist had come down, and he's gone. And in them situations, I'm quite good actually. I'm quite calm, but quite quick-witted. I don't know what I think it's the Scouse in me. And I kind of just was telling him, yeah, listen, I'll read about it in your next book. And I was like, yeah, write it all down. And I was gesturing, to write it down. I was just goading him, to be honest. But the thing is like Roy will do anything to win. Anything to win, which is, for me as an elite sportsman, I get it because I'd do anything to win. And you do things differently, whether that's off the ball, you give someone a little dig, or you wind them up, with your mouth, with the banter, whatever it is to get an advantage. That's how it was back then. And it was no holds barred, by the way. I mean, it was some of the things that were said were disgusting, but that's what happened on the football pitch, and that's what you have to live with. So, for me to try and, wind him up and get the better of him, was part of the game. And I always thought, after the game, we'd probably just shake hands over it, and it was kind of, well done, mate. You give your best, I give your best, and we move on from here. But, the incident happened, his head come off. I mean, thank God Uriah Rennie, who was a black belt in karate at the time, was refereeing, because I think he would have actually ripped my head off had he got near me. But Uriah was standing in the middle of us. And then he kind of calmed down, and then the game was filtering out, and there was a corner, and it got cleared, and we were running out, and he just come past me, and he went bang, blindsided me and elbowed me in the side of the head, and I kind of went down, but not like, I never dived or went down. It was just more of a bit of a shock thing. And Beckham come over, and a few of the lads come over, and he knew straight away he'd been sent out. He just walked off straight away. Quinny tried to go over and put his arm around him, and I don't know what Quinny was up to. Maybe he had a DVD he wanted back, I don't know. But he went off, and then the next day, the News of the World rang me and offered me a few quid actually to do a big story on him, and I declined the offer because it wasn't, it was
wasn't enough.
Me and Roy. It was something to do. So I thought we would kind of shake on it, and time, as a good healer as it is, would kind of settle it all down. But that incident and the way we are together is still the same today. It's still the same today. It's there's no love lost.
Have you seen him since? Was there ever a?
Loads of times. Bumped into him on a plane. I've held the door open for him at Wembley. I've seen him in a restaurant about 3 or 4 months ago.
Right.
He was on a table, like three tables down from me with his family. He didn't bat an eyelid. And it's up to him. If he wants to hold it for the rest of his life, then that's I can't change his mind. It's up to him. But what I would say is, if I've done anything to upset him, I apologise. But I'm 50 years of age now. I don't need to be worrying whether Roy Keane's going to send me a Christmas card or a birthday card. But it is what it is.
David, last one for you. When you went to get your DVD back, was there a conversation, or was it like cursory, straight in, straight out?
No. There was a conversation. But I think I went with Gary Breen, and he was like, no, my mind's made up, and I'm done.
So you did actually try and talk him out of it, or like some kind of here, listen, maybe this could all be smoothed over.
Yeah, you wouldn't say, we're not idiots. You're not going to talk someone around an elite performer, one of the best players in the world, who has done something. You're not stupid enough to think you're going to change his mind, But because we're so close, like I say, I think we're next door, and but you just knew that wasn't going to, that wasn't really going to change, and you don't become the player that that he was, or Jason, or you don't get to any of these levels unless you've got that self-belief and and that will to win and hunger and desire, which kind of at times can spill over. You don't get that. You can't, I guess, for Royce or any, so a lot of players switch it on and off, right? You are who you are. And if he didn't have that, he might not be he probably wouldn't be the player that he was. Yeah. So you kind of, and in some ways, I respect his position in not changing. I also respect Jason's in terms of Jason was pretty vocal. It doesn't, and they both had their sort of line in the sand. And I think ironically, I think Roy would respect Jason a lot for sticking with his belief, his opinion on, no, you were right. Like Roy thinks he was right. And I guess that's where we are in all this, so.
I think that is exactly where we are in all this, is that it did happen, and the fallout was the fallout, but nobody's ever going to really change their mind about it, and there's no point in really getting it. But it is definitely interesting to kind of see it's this massive hinge point in Irish football. Thanks to both of you for being on the show this morning, because when we were talking about doing this, I was like, do we really have to talk about this again? Hopefully this is the last time ever, or maybe it just becomes
until the 21st anniversary.
Comedy shtick.
We'll all get together. How about that?
That's exactly what we should do. We should go back to Saipan and you can all reenact it. Yeah, it can be the dramatic reconstruction for the movie that David's making.
Not wrong, mate. Can I play myself in it, Dave?
Yep, definitely.
The Botox these days, Jason, is miraculous.
Definitely. I'd love to see them tapes. I'd love to see it.
Well, what are you going to do with them, David? I'm going to make you an offer right now. What are you going to do with them? We will definitely produce that documentary for you.
Yeah, ironically, I've had a few offers. They are in the loft, and not of my house, but of my parents, and they passed away. So I will be going up in that loft at some point in the near future, digging those tapes out, and we'll see what they're like. There's probably not a camcorder that could play them. So long ago. I don't know, but anyway.
We'll find one somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you still have the DVDs that you lent for Roy Keane as well?
Yeah, well, the Good Job Blockbuster went bust, so.
That's why. It's you too. Right. Yeah. Good stuff. Thanks a million, folks. Cheers.
Cheers,
thanks,
guys.
boys. Take it easy. See you, Dave.
That was great. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Our first roadshow in nearly 3 years is here. The football pod have added a Mayo legend to the lineup for Castlebar on the 2nd of June. It's the biggest game of the opening round of the qualifiers. It's Mayo against Monaghan. Joining Paddy and James at the Royal Theatre is a man they had several battles with on big days at Croker. It's Keith Higgins. A brilliant night of football chat to focus on. Tickets are £20 plus booking fees. Go to otbsports.com/events. The 2nd of June in Castlebar. We're back tomorrow with Matt Williams, Anthony Moyes in studio on the 5th episode of Have You Seen with Joe Conroy, and much more. See you then.
James, how exciting is it to be a part of Leinster Rugby at the moment?
Very exciting, yeah. It's great for us to be back in the European Cup final, particularly after kind of the disappointment over the last couple of years, and we're obviously going pretty well at the moment in terms of the URC as well. So every week is a big week at the moment. We had a quarter final a couple of weeks ago, then we had a semi-final a week later. We've got Munster in the Aviva this week. We've got a European final next week, so it's pretty full on, but everyone's enjoying it a lot.
And what does a week look like for a Leinster rugby player?
So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday would be our training days, and we'd have a down day on a Wednesday. Generally Monday and Tuesday, particularly Tuesday, would be kind of the tougher training days. Tuesday sessions would be pretty tough, and then we'd have the opportunity to kind of recover Wednesday, and Thursday and Friday would be just lighter sessions, and keeping ourselves fresh kind of in the lead up to a game. And then generally we kind of play Saturday, and you recover and get your kind of analysis and review and preview done on the Sunday evening. So that's kind of a bit of a simple version of what it looks like. Yeah,
it looks very busy. Yeah. I'm sure it's tough going. It's a lot of hard work, but I'm sure you're enjoying it, especially when you're having success. Last week we had the semi-final. Very impressive by yourself and the team to go out against Toulouse and get the win.
Yeah, it was brilliant. It was brilliant for me to be back again and involved with the boys, and like, you know, we've missed those days in the Aviva, those big European Cup days. You know, the lads only had 5 days to sell tickets with the turnaround between the semi and the quarter, but you know, we still had 42,000 that turned up. So just it was testament to kind of the support base that we have here at Leinster, and hopefully you know, we get a good crowd this week against Munster and again over in Marseille in a couple of weeks' time.
And how big of an impact do those fans make to you on the pitch, say?
A massive impact, yeah. I mean, the atmosphere was class, and look, it's even on the bus as you get into the stadium. Just thousands of people were lining the streets outside, and it gives you a huge lift. And then in the game, look, it's those kind of big moments and those tough moments when you're, you know, inside your 22 and you're defending Toulouse, or when you know, you've a big opportunity to maybe get a score, or in their 22. It's those moments when they really make a difference.
That's Aldi brand ambassador James Ryan there talking to Aisling as part of the Aldi Play Rugby competition, where over 300 pupils from 16 schools lined out at the Aviva Stadium last Wednesday. This national event follows a series of regional festivals that took place throughout the 4 provinces earlier this year. From there, 16 schools were selected, giving students the chance to follow in the footsteps of their Irish rugby heroes and play in the Aviva. Aldi Play Rugby is a national programme aimed at primary school children across Ireland. For more information on Aldi Play Rugby and how your school can get involved, please visit aldi.ie/play-rugby/programme, and you can watch that full chat between James and Aisling on our YouTube channel now. See you tomorrow.
As we've been discussing, Manchester City champions for a 4th time in 5 years. Liverpool perhaps playing the best football and certainly producing the best points tallies across several seasons of any second place team in history. They looked on once again. Philippe Auclair is with us to reflect on a dramatic day. Philippe, great to have you on.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Drama to the end, I suppose, in many respects a fitting finale to what has been an exceptional title race. Did you spend more of your time at the Etihad or at Anfield?
I spent more of my time actually at Arsenal, if you can believe it. I was at the last game against Everton and was, like everybody else, keeping an eye on what was happening away from the Emirates Stadium, as well as what was happening in front of me. But yes, quite a last day. I mean, even if you look at it with hindsight, it was never in doubt, of course.
Well, in hindsight, with it never in doubt, it really felt like it for so much of the day. I just had that air sometimes, and players are not immune to the psychology and the emotion, and it had an air. And once Villa scored that first goal after 30 plus minutes of City pressure, and not least the second, it really had that air.
It had, and also that there had been this feeling, I think, for quite a while now, that there was a kind of irresistible wind which was billowing, and the sails of Liverpool were billowing with that wind, and that something would happen that would actually give them the title at the very last minute. And to be honest, when they went down to Wolves, everybody thought, well, actually, that's quite par for the course for Liverpool. They don't know how to do things easily. We know they're going to equalise. We know they're going to win, and they did equalise, and they did win. But what was happening in Manchester City certainly was, fueling, I suppose, the hopes of many. It's a word that I use with a little bit of hesitancy, perhaps, because it's the old argument, were the media and the fans in general hoping for Liverpool to upset the cart at the very last minute? Probably, as a matter of fact. But yes, it felt that way, and it felt as well that Manchester City is a team that revealed its fragility at the very last hurdle, and you thought, do they have the qualities to overcome that? And they found the qualities, and which is perhaps what is going to give this title a very special flavour for them, I suppose, because they were not the underdogs. It was not like 2012 and Aguero 90 minutes plus 53 seconds or something like that. It was nothing like that. They were the favourites. They were, as some had expected, that they were finding things difficult at the very last minute, and they overcame that. And I don't think that everybody among us thought that they had those qualities within them, as well as the others, which we've admired all through the season.
We saw Pep's emotion at full time, initial elation.
Yeah.
And then perhaps almost a delayed reaction to being so close to the precipice. And he would have been criticised for team selection, and then more broadly criticised for underachieving with the billions spent. And he jogged down the tunnel, which was kind of a striking moment as well. Where do you think Pep was at yesterday?
First of all, for somebody who's been criticised often, and sometimes, actually most often, rightly so, for not being perhaps the best at managing what is unfolding in front of his eyes on the pitch, probably unsurpassed when it comes to preparing his players for facing up to what they were going to encounter during a game, he actually got the calls right. He got every single call right. You just have to see who was involved in those 3 goals to see that. And I think there is a measure with Manchester City of feeling that it is a title, a 3rd title in 4 years. But I wouldn't say it's a failure, but it's not quite what they were hoping for. And I would imagine it's relief. He's a very intense, very odd man to understand at times. Some of his reactions surprise us more often than not. And relief was probably the deepest emotion in him. Pride as well, I would imagine. But I can't think for one second that there wouldn't be a part of him that wasn't thinking of how this team, which had known how to react in a very difficult moment, had failed to do so in Europe at the same time. So I think conflicting emotions, perhaps, for him and for his players and for, I think, a number of Manchester City supporters.
Well, in truth, it also helps when it's Aston Villa and you've plucked their best player by some distance to sit on your bench versus Real Madrid. I'm not sure they've suddenly discovered it. I'll be holding my breath still next season in Europe.
Well, it is going to be the great, for the time being, of course, an answered question is that obviously it is the ultimate aim of this so-called project. They've now got the cyborg, the super player whom they hope is going to be a catalyst, who is going to enable them to go past that last hurdle, which they failed at so often, actually every time since Pep has been at the helm there. It's an odd one, because looking at the reactions from Manchester City fans across the board and in social media, obviously there's a great deal of happiness and relief and so forth, but there is also a certain degree of I don't think people, or we don't think that people realize what we're doing at the moment, and that we're not perhaps appreciating what this team has been achieving over the past few years for what it was. That there is a certain degree of reluctance in a way to go full on with our admiration. Our respect is obviously a given, but our admiration and our emotional connection with what's been achieved, which again is completely different to what people are feeling towards what Liverpool has achieved and could be achieving in a few days' time.
And do you feel that's more to do with the source of the money or the amounts of the money?
I think it's got to do with the source of the money. I think it's got to do with the amount of money. I think it's got to do with the personality of the managers. I think it's got to do with also the kind of football that both are playing. One which is striving for perfection, perhaps, and the other which is reveling in its own imperfections and in finding ways to beat those imperfections, and perhaps makes you stand out of your seat more often than the other one does. I think that there is something about Liverpool which is kind of football with a human dimension, so a fallible dimension, which is in some ways missing from Manchester City, which is odd because Manchester City has failed on a number of occasions, not on this one, obviously. But somehow, because of the investment, the nature of the investment, but also I think because of the personalities involved. You know, Liverpool's team is full of characters, personalities that you can feel a very direct and very strong emotional connection with. I wouldn't say necessarily the same of the people who are in Manchester City's squad. There are obviously some players like this, like Kevin De Bruyne, obviously is one of them. but you do not quite have the same emotional connection unless you're obviously a Manchester City supporter. And that is a question of not just image, but perception. And I'm also thinking of the actual personality of the players who are involved and the technical staff who are involved. There is something, despite the beauty of some of the football that Manchester City has been proposing, for years now, and this year as much as any other year, that is still slightly mechanical, or is perceived as mechanical, which is not the case at all of their most direct rival, and I should say their only rival in England.
Yes,
because there's one thing we shouldn't forget is that if Liverpool weren't around and Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool weren't around, we would have had a complete domination of the Premier League by Manchester City, which would be akin to what we've seen from PSG, from Bayern Munich, and up until recently from Juventus. So in a way, Liverpool is the club that is hiding the fact that Manchester City are so far ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up with you, and it is the interesting dynamic as Erling Haaland prepares to arrive and further boost Manchester City, and it feels like Liverpool are operating at breakneck speed and perfection in the transfer market, and Jurgen Klopp's energy levels and enthusiasm are as great as ever, but this is just to keep pace with City and generally across the last number of years come up short. Chelsea mushroom up occasionally, but we don't know what the post-Abramovich era even looks like, and then beyond that there really is nothing at the moment. So at a glance, the league and the finale, everything's in such rude health, but on closer inspection, were Liverpool to go into any kind of decline of sorts, then this era of Manchester City domination would not be remembered very fondly. How City look beyond Pep when he decides to go is a very interesting question.
Well, I think this is the play that we have on theatre scene at the moment is going to go on for a few seasons yet.
Yeah.
Jurgen Klopp has signed a new contract. Pep Guardiola has decided to stay on as well. So this is a dialogue, a duel that we're going to be the privileged witnesses to for a few years to come. But it's true that other than that, it's very difficult to see where the challenge is going to come from. I mean, the obvious club to look at would be Manchester United, obviously, who have actually, if you look at the net spend of Premier League clubs over the past, since Jurgen Klopp arrived at Liverpool in 2015, I think Manchester United come in second position and Chelsea in third. The Manchester United are the only ones who are close enough to Manchester City to be, considered challengers. Liverpool, amazingly enough, only come 10th in that classification, which is quite extraordinary. It tells you how exceptional the work that Jurgen Klopp has been doing has been. And Jurgen Klopp and obviously the people, the scouts, the people who are in charge of the recruitment, which has been, non-pareil, to coin a phrase. There is within this league, which is presented and sells itself as the most competitive in the world, as the league in which every weekend you can have great surprises. In fact, you don't. That's the thing. It's all, again, a question of perception. Manchester City are way, way ahead of everybody else. And it's because of one thing, several things. Of course, the talent, some would say the genius of Pep Guardiola, and the quality of the players, and especially the size of the wage bill. The size of the wage bill is what determines where a team will finish. I was going to say more often than not. In fact, no, always. Yeah. If you look at the teams which went down, if you look at, Watford, Norwich, Burnley, and you look at Leeds as well, who were in real trouble until the very last second almost, these four teams are the four which have the smallest wage packet of the Premier League. It's not by chance. It's not a coincidence. It's just the way it works in modern football.
Mm. Speaking of wage packets, that brings us neatly on to Mbappe for a moment.
Yes. Well, that's something else, isn't it? Because don't forget the signing on bonus. The exact figures are not exactly known, but it is this signing on bonus which is making him, the best paid player in Ligue 1 by a distance. And I think now a rival, again, I'm just saying that by looking at some figures which some people who know about PSG have been telling me. We're looking at something which we have never looked at before. It's insane, actually.
What kind of ballpark, Philippe?
The ballpark, we're talking net as well, which is, complicates things because in some countries you have gross salaries, like in England, for example. In France, as in Italy, you talk about net salaries, so after tax. So you're talking about a salary of perhaps 30 million euros, something like that, per year, net of tax, where you're talking about a signing-on fee, which apparently is in the area of 130 million.
Net?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. To be honest, I mean, these figures, I'm not, I haven't received a text message from Nasser Al-Khelaifi confirming that.
Sure.
But these are figures which have been, given to me by people who follow PSG very, very closely, day by day, and who seem to be quite confident in what they're saying. It's absolutely huge.
It is a very naive question, clearly, to ask, but given that they lost 200 plus million last year, and there's some, at least, veneer of financial fair play supposedly intact here, how?
Well, the rules have changed. The goalposts have been moved. First of all, there was COVID, which led to the suspension of financial fair play by UEFA.
Yeah.
Then you've got the regulations of the French league, which enable, in fact, owners to do this kind of thing, because what the French, the NCG, which looks after the finances of the French clubs, is looking at is financial equilibrium balance. So as long as the owner is willing to put in money and can make the books balance, that's fine. Okay. So no problem on that side.
Okay.
And UEFA has changed the FPF rules. They seem to be much more conveniently for PSG and for Manchester City and others. They seem to be far more lax. So the age of financial fair play, if it ever existed, because we know how clubs found ways around them, this age is over.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette